What's up, guys? Just a quick reminder, February 1st at 6 p.m, we are dropping brand new Bloke shirts for 50% off. So normally they're around $50. They're going to be $25. On top of that, February 1st, the biggest sale ever at Bloke in a Bar. It's going to be not only 50% off the brand new shirts, 50% off everything on the store. Singlets, board shorts, thongs, party shirts, other shirts, hats, everything. 50% off everything for 50 hours, February 1st, 6 p.m, plus brand new Bloke shirts dropping. That'll also be 50% off. So be there, set your alarms, 6 p.m, February 1st.
Just a bloke in a bar.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to an episode of Bloke in a Bar, powered by Bloke Beer. Get in your local. We're in every single celebrations in New South Wales. We've got specials going. We're in every Bottle-O in New South Wales. Make sure to head in. Plus, we're in hundreds of stores in Queensland, New South Wales, ACT and Victoria. We've got a store located on our website. It's a beautiful, easy drinking beer. We've got one of the best young brewers in the country to come up with a recipe. It's not fruity. It's not hoppy. It's just beer that tastes like real beer. Beer for blokes that turn up for their family, mates, and good times. Plus, we've got plenty of merch on bloke.shop. We've got party shirts for Christmas. We've got singlets. We've got board shorts, thongs. You name it. That's at bloke.shop. Head there now. Grab some before it sells out. But now with that out of the way, I'm so excited. I've got the great Quade Cooper here. How you going, brother?
Yeah, good, bro.
Bro, very good to have you.
I appreciate it. It's good to be here and just even see you turn it on like that. That's a skill in itself.
Mate, talking nonsense is probably what I get paid the most for. More than I ever played footy. Matter of fact, I trained my whole life to be a professional athlete, and I'm doing better talking shit. So I don't know what happened, but it's enough about me, mate. How are you going? Obviously, you're back from over in Japan.
Yeah. So I had a Achilles injury. So I had surgery about 4 months ago now. So just doing my rehab back here. Which has been great for my club to be able to allow me to stay here with my family, have an Australian summer, but also be under good supervision by, we've got the Queensland Academy of Sport, who's basically looking after me from a physio standpoint and a strength and conditioning. So just having that one-on-one, because as you know, like teams are made up of like 40 odd players.
Yeah.
And when you've got, say, 3 or 4 physios between that amount of people, the hands-on time's probably not as good as it could be.
Well, getting on the bed before training is
for
tough.
sure. Yeah, well, everyone's there
Yeah.
lining up for that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now having that one-on-one and just going through everything. So it's like we go through our gym and there's someone there watching over everything that we do.
Wow.
And stacking and taking off the weights is probably one of the worst things. But it's good, man. I'm very grateful for the Queensland Academy of Sport for looking after myself and Samu Karevi.
It's like the quality of training that you'd be getting, like watching your form, your posture, like watching the weight. So like if you're by yourself, you might go, I'll just do 100 kilos squats for 10. They might go, no. Last week we got to go up by 2.5%, all that kind of stuff.
Oh, for sure. And just having that attention to detail with it, man. It's like, because I know, like I train on my own regardless, and that's just part of my lifestyle now. But having guys there, so it is a lot easier to train with someone or have someone there helping you out, saying exactly what you said. It's like, okay, you did 100 last week. How'd you feel with that? Should we go up to 105? And you're like, yeah, I'll give it a crack. And say you might not get that, but you know where you were, and there's someone that's pushing you forward. Throughout COVID, I was training on my own, and which was good because I actually had to learn how to do that when you're not feeling up to it, going into the shed and just punching out a session. But then my little brother, we got a little crew together off the back of that, so that always helped. So coming back to that, bro, is like having this facility and training around all these other athletes. There's some of the best athletes in the country training there.
Yep.
And so it's good. You surround yourself with those type of people. It's hard not to rise to that level.
Yeah, absolutely. It's and it's almost in the gym, if you're with other competitive people.
Yeah, for sure.
You don't want to be the one going, I'm just going to chill today.
Man, and the thing is like coming into that facility and you see some of these athletes that are going at it and you're like, and they're getting paid nothing. You know what I mean? 100. So they're just there because the facility, and they get an opportunity to use the facility. And so there was a story a couple of weeks ago. This dude had something wrong with his car, and he was cycling in like 20, 30 Ks every day. So cycling in there, training, cycling home, then come back in the afternoon.
No way.
You know what I mean? And I was
Yeah.
just like blown away because I was like, man, bro, like Uber. But it's like
Yeah.
when you understand the situation and circumstance,
Yeah.
like a $20, $30 Uber for someone who's not getting paid at all.
Yeah.
And I spoke to one of the girls yesterday, and she was telling me that they get paid around like $5,000-$6,000 from Athletics Australia. And it's like, so they have to go out and find ways to sort of subsidize and make up for that income, you know. So
When you see that, I mean, me personally, when I see young fellows and what they go through, it takes me back to when I was a young fella and how much fire I had, like willing to do whatever it took. And it's funny how, like, no matter how much you continue sticking to the process and you think that you have fire, when you compare it to, like, I don't know about you, but for me personally, comparing it to when I was a young fella, like that fire was fucking whatever it took kind of thing.
right, but that's the thing when you're young. There's no other choice.
Yeah.
Right. But there's also, I look back at that and it was like, yeah, I had fire in that, but I also, like, a few things just came quite easy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, I had fire, but I look back and I'm like, I was a little shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I took a lot of these opportunities for granted, but I was a young person trying to figure it out. And, you know, from a lot of the background that I grew up, there's no one who's been through that you can sort of touch, that's close enough for you to touch. You know what I mean? So it's like, or get advice from. So then same sort of thing, that fire was always there, because I felt that if I didn't make it in rugby, well, what was I going to be? You know, and I was like, I definitely don't want to be poor.
Yeah.
You know? So it was like, yeah, there's a fair bit of motivation coming from different avenues, but I was lucky enough to have enough talent as well.
Yeah.
For when I slipped up a few times.
Yeah, it's that when you watch like a preseason and you see all the young fellas coming through, it just takes you so, like,
For sure.
it puts you right back there, bro. In that
Man.
mindset of, like, overawed, nervous, but also cocky. It's just a weird mix,
Yeah,
eh?
of
You're not
course,
really
yeah.
cocky, but you are. So
Yeah.
when you look back, you're like, bro, why did you think you could act this certain way, but you're not thinking like that?
For sure, man. And that's the crazy thing about, like, sport, and especially footy. And you come in, there's so many different personalities, so many different backgrounds, and then they all mold together into one operation. And it's like, yeah, looking back, I remember rocking up to Wallaby camp when I was like, so I was grade 11 or 12, can't remember which year it was. So I rock up to Wallaby camp, and I've got 2 different color boots.
Oh, no.
You know what I mean? Because it's like, and I turn up there, and then I remember,
Oh, my God.
you know, some of the players like Gitz, George Gregan, you know, Stephen Larkham, these type of players, just looking over at me like, hey, who's this player? Who does he think he is?
2 different colours.
Yeah, red and a blue boot. So, oh man, like if that doesn't say arrogant and cocky,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And I walked in there shy and nervous, everything, far from cocky and overconfident.
Yeah.
But it was just my appearance.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
in my own environment, I was cocky. I was confident, and you know what I mean?
That's a really good point. It's the environment that
Yeah, of
kind of
course.
reflects how you're feeling. Well, let's talk quickly first. Before we go back to when you're a young fella, I got to talk about it because I think it's just one of the over the last few years, it's one of the greatest things I've seen in sport. It's when you returned to the Wallabies, so 2021, rumours circled that you'd be called in the Wallabies squad. Like, walk us through that whole situation, because, like, you'd had such an incredible career, and then it seemed like, you know, maybe not, and then all of a sudden you go back. You don't just go back; you go back and fucking play good footy.
Bro, you know, the funny thing with that is that, like, when I look back at that time and I look back at when I was playing in the Wallabies before I got called back into it. So the last game I played was like 2016, I think it was, and it was against Italy at Suncorp. And that series, so I don't even say that I played in those games because I played like the last minute, and I kind of got put on right at the end when the game, like, because guys got injured. And so I played a minute against Italy in that. But I look back at me as a man, as a person, sitting on that bench and how I was as an athlete. I shouldn't even have been on the field, you know what I mean? So it's like I just wasn't up to that standard when I look physically how I was, mentally how I was. And that's probably for a space of 4 years. So when I went away and I ended up sort of a few things happened at the Reds that they were pretty well documented, where there was a bit of a fallout. I ended up just sitting at home playing club footy, which was, to me, with hindsight, looking back, was one of the best things that I'd ever gone through.
Wow.
Because I learned a lot about myself and, you know, why I play the game, but also, and sort of we touched on it before, is like I played the game for all the wrong reasons, you know, because I wanted the fame, I wanted to play in those moments, but I didn't do any of the work that was needed. I had talent, but I didn't do the work that was needed to justify me being in those moments and being successful in those moments. So then I went away to Japan. And again, that was another hit to the ego, because my team, like, this is just from an outside looking in, my team was second division in Japan. And at the time I was like, I'm not going to go play that. Saying to Koda, my manager, I'm not playing there, bro.
Yeah.
Like, you saying that's what level I'm at, so I should just disappear and retire.
Yeah.
And he was like, bro, they're going to pay you a lot more money than you're getting paid here to go and play 5 games of second division. Like, you're looking at it the wrong way, but I was looking at it from my ego, right?
Yeah.
So then when I go to Japan, it's like I let go of my ego and I go there and I actually just love learning. I love teaching these guys over there, because all they want to do is learn.
Yeah.
So then that was for like basically a 3-year period where I'm away, and just like, as we sort of spoke about, it's like I was so focused on my journey that, yeah, of course, like if someone asked me to play for Australia again, I would have been like, oh yeah, but I actually at this point I didn't need it.
Yeah, okay.
There was nothing in me that wanted that from the space of, hey, I need that to feel fulfilled.
Okay, yeah.
So then when that happened, I ended up having a conversation with our defense coach at the time, Matt Taylor, and he was like, mate, I would love, like, it would be great to have you in here. I know you could do wonders with this group of guys and you could add a lot of value. He's like, I've been watching all your games and stuff. And I was like, oh, sweet. Like, yeah, thanks for reaching out, you know, like, tee it up then. And so I had a conversation with Dave Rennie. And so we had this, like, good conversation, and I guess he was trying to work me out, my character. And one of the things that I sort of touched on there is like, bro, I'm 4 months into a holiday.
Yeah.
This is my life and this is my lifestyle. So whether I play or come into the Wallaby camp or whether I don't, this is what I'm going to be doing. And this is who I am as a person. So this is the level that I live at. And we had a conversation about what they were doing in camp. And I said, and he was telling me how hard they were working. And I said, you know what, Renz, like, I said, that's great to hear. But what I'm hearing is also that's 4 weeks of hard work. 4 weeks is not enough, you know what I mean? Like, that's cool that they're working hard for 4 weeks, but as soon as that game finishes and they get 6 weeks holiday, they'll stop.
Yeah.
So for me, I said, I'm 4 months into a holiday. This is my regime, you know? So it was like, if you're figuring out who I am as a person, this is how I live.
Yeah. And
I sort of started to touch on the fact that I don't need to come in and play. Like, I'm very happy with where I'm at. And I know that the team doesn't actually need me. You know, like, yeah, someone might have got injured and you need someone to fill in. But if I'm not available, then someone's going to fill into that spot. Yeah. The game will still keep rolling and it'll move on. If you pull the coach out, well, someone will step in and coach. Like, the game just keeps moving.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we think that we're important, but we're actually really not in the big scheme of things. Like, in that moment, you might have been important. So we had a great conversation, and then he invited me in, and I had no thought of playing really. Like, I just knew that when I look back, last time I played for Australia, and look at where I am now, I'm totally different physically. I'm totally different mentally. I live a totally different life. So if I was kind of successful then, now I know I'm going to be, like, I know I'm just going to be able to do my job at a very high level. Yeah. So then it was like a flip of a coin, because I had all the ability, and it was like, going to a game, was I going to play really well or really bad? Now it's like, if I have a bad game, I know that my bad game is going to be just there. Yeah. I know my great game is going to be just above that. Yeah. And then here's me every week, like right in between. Yeah. So that fluctuation's just not going to move a hell of a lot. So then when I come into that game, people were like, bro, you haven't played for like 5-6 years. You nervous? How you feeling? And I was like, Bro, I'll tell you one thing, it's a game.
Yeah.
Like, at the end of the day, it's not that I don't care if we win or lose. I know what level I'm going to come at. So that's a guarantee that I can guarantee you that this is the level that I'll play at. Does it guarantee that we're going to win? No. But what it means is this is what I'm going to give. Now, what are the rest of my teammates going to give? But I can contribute to what they're doing by how I hold and carry myself and the level that I play at. So when I stepped into that game, like, again, it wasn't about winning or losing. It ended up coming down to taking a kick. And then the same thing went through my head. It was like, actually, I remember this on the field. I stand on the field, we get the penalty. If you watch the video, I sort of look over to Hodgie and I say to Hodgie, bro, how you, like, because I took a kick maybe 5-10 minutes before that, and it was like 40 meters out, 20 meters in from the sideline. Bro, and I hit this kick, and I was watching it thinking, like, I was kicking really well. And I'm watching it fly, and I'm thinking, oh, it's going to hit the crossbar. And I'm like, fuck, it's going to fall short, watching it. And then it just went over. Like, I'm talking like it would have been a bee's dick. And so I'm like, when we get the next kick, it's like 5 or 6 meters back from that. And it's in the exact same spot, but 5 or 6 meters back. And I'm like, fuck, I look over at Hodgie. Hodgie comes over and, like, he thinks the score's different.
Oh, really?
And he's like, bro, just tap it and kick it out. And I'm like, and I look at him and I'm like, bro, and then I'm like, bro, we're losing by 1. He's like, goes white. And then I said, I'll kick it. But for me, that moment was like a crucial moment in my own development and my own journey, bro, because it was like, of course, as we spoke about, as athletes and especially footy players, that's like taking in basketball, a 3-pointer to win the game or a free throw to win the game, and the game's over. You know, so it was like, hey, it's a cool moment. But I understand, hey, you're better at me than at taking these long-range kicks. And so even when we had that conversation, me and him, if that was 5-6 years ago, I would have wanted the T. Because I would have wanted the accolades. I would have wanted to be the hero, you know what I mean? Because that probably would have masked over a lot of the shortfalls or the shortcuts that I had taken. So it's like, if I didn't train hard here or there or miss this tackle here or there, but this kick will make up for it. You know what I mean?
100%.
So just being able to be honest with myself and know that every day I had done the work. So now when in this moment, I'm happy someone else take it. If you're better at this, you do it. You know what I mean? But then, so then when it was on me to kick it, I actually knew that, hey, I've done work and practice for years for moments like this. But it doesn't guarantee I'm going to get the kick. But I'm going to do my best and I'll live with that. You know? So it was like at that moment, whether I got it or I didn't, it was going to be the same outcome. And that moment will be that, just a moment in time. And I have to walk off the field and I have to go jump in an ice bath. I still have to go shower and then get ready the next day, do recovery. Then we have Monday and we're preparing for South Africa again. So like your life just still goes on. And I wasn't so heavily invested in the result of that. And this is, again, touches on something we spoke about before, is like that journey of where I was at. I'm still going. That wasn't the finish line. So if I was kicking that and sailing off into the sunset, hey, maybe. But it wasn't stopping or finishing there for me making that kick.
But I mean, when it does go over though, what's the feeling? Like, obviously the feeling is elation, but like we spoke about it before, was it almost such a personal reward and a realization of like, this is the result of making the changes a few years ago or at all, or was it just elation, pure elation?
Bro, it was like, honestly, it wasn't even either. Like,
really?
I kicked it, and as soon as I started running into the ball, I just for some reason my run up, everything, just every step just felt perfect. And I hit the ball, and I just knew, bro. And I was sort of like, there's a moment, and I'm not sure if you see it, but like I sort of like just close my eyes and I just look up, and I'm like, I knew that moment was just bigger than, like, wasn't just about me, right? So for me, it was more so about that whole story of like what I had gone through and everything. And to know that, like, say even my little brother, I said to him, he's got his trial with my club in Japan. And when we started training with me through COVID, he got really fit and strong. And I said, bro, just because you're fit and strong now, don't expect that you're going to get an opportunity. I said, that might come now, but it might come in 2-3 years. We don't know.
Yeah.
But if you can make this your lifestyle and in 2 years, that opportunity comes and you're ready, hey, you're going to take it.
Yeah.
And this was the exact same thing. So for me, it just felt like there's other people that will see the story and they'll see it for the kick. But then there'll be people who see it and go, fuck, I seen him go through like this and this. And then tomorrow he's still showing up. You know what I mean? So that was the main thing for me, is when the kick was sailing through, the boys are jumping on me. And I was just like, okay, I still got to go recover and do this. So it went through my head. But of course, like I was happy because you could see what it meant to everyone else.
Yeah.
But again, like you flip that over, and if your focus is on what it means for everyone else or what it means to yourself, I missed that kick and everyone's upset.
Yeah.
So then now that hits me even more like a ton of bricks. So you got to realize and be able to work out, like great feelings are great, bad feelings, they can be harsh too, but try and just find that middle zone where it's like, yo, I'm happy that I got that kick.
Yeah.
But if I missed it, I probably would still feel the same. If that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure, because it's you've done all the preparation 100% correct, so you can't change the outcome. The outcome is the outcome.
Right. And so that's where I find for me is my fight and my challenge and my game day is in every training session. And like if I was to break this down, like let's just make these quick numbers though, like you're 365 days in a year. I would say that we would train for at least 250 of those, right? And in a calendar year, you only play like 30 games max. So 15 for the Wallabies and 15 for your club, thereabouts. I only played like 5 for the Wallabies last year. But so if I train for 250 to 300 days at a high level for 30 games, like which one's more important?
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So if I'm showing up Monday, and then if we break that down from days to sessions, the sessions be up around 500. So if you're doing 500 sessions for 30 games that are 80 minutes long, now you tell me which one's more important. Which one should you be putting your focus and emphasis on? Because a lot of athletes I speak to talk about, like I'm just going to try and freshen up for the game. It's like, what do you mean freshen up for the game? Like, so you're not going to do this session? Or I'm going to coast through this session, not do this one because I want to be right, like, and sparkly and fresh for this game. And it's like, bro, like, get to a point where, hey, this is your game. And if I'm getting through all of these, and you might have bad training days or lower level training days, but they just all accumulate. It's just too much here that outweighs the 30 games here. And as I said, I only played in 5 of them last year. So I had like 6 games for my club, because our season was only 6 games long, and then 5 games for the Wallabies. So like, mate, 250 days training for
11 games or whatever.
For 11 games, I'm like, you know what I mean? So it's like
outweighs it massively. The time spent is in the training, really.
Exactly, bro. And that goes back to the journey and the process. So and that's how you break down the journey and process versus the destination. Because if you're making those 30 games your destinations, it's like, oh fuck, like if you lose that game, you're so upset and you're so dwell on it because there's only 29 more. You know what I mean? So then it's like, now if your team's not doing great, let's say you lose 15 of those. Now what? Like you're just beating yourself up every day, and that's when you start getting into that point of
your training too. Then
you'll hate training because you're so focused on that feeling, those endorphins from winning the game that you need, rather than, bro, win training.
100%.
Do your weight session, like turn up to that weight session and lift well every day. And then when there's a day that you don't lift well, okay, well, like what's the percentage if you, out of 300, if you had 10 bad sessions?
It's like nothing.
It's like this, you know what I mean? That would be like having a bad quarter in a game.
100%. Did it feel, you probably didn't really, maybe you did, but did it feel good to the love that you received from Australia though? Like how many people were happy for you? Because like that, like I was happy we won for sure, great. But I was more happy for you. Like I was sitting there going, fuck, what a journey this bloke's been on.
Bro, for sure. I think that feeling and reciprocation from the public was more so like, again, for me, it didn't necessarily feel like it was about kicking the goal. Like that was the conversation starter. A lot of people came up to him and were like, mate, like I followed your career and you're always super talented, but I follow you on social media and stuff. And I see the work that you put in. I see the what you've been through, things like that. And that to me was like, oh, that means well. And they would speak about their own journeys or their child's journey and sort of how much that example was used on them, you know. So that for me was probably the most rewarding part of the whole journey. Up until this day, it was like a shift from being like a player who people just love to watch a highlight and you either loved or hated me to people saying, hey, you've like inspired me in my life. And it's not just about moments on the field of, oh, you did this, you did that. It's just about, hey, like your journey has inspired me through my own like tough times and stuff like that. So that was like a great feeling. And yeah, I guess the Australian public kind of like rallied behind myself and probably the team at that stage, you know?
Massively. It's just such a full circle moment. You go from kind of like the golden child that had this crazy potential, but people were almost like, oh, he could have been this for us, but he didn't. And then you come back and then you become that. Yeah. It's just, it was incredible, bro. So good.
And that's the thing, bro. Because like, as you said, it was like when I was younger, I kind of just disrespected my talent because it was like, it kind of just came easy to me. And yeah, so it was like that whole full circle transition. And the reason why I guess I'm proud of that for myself is that it goes back to that whole journey that I went on, you know. So I figured it all out for myself and how to be better as a man, which coming back and playing rugby is just a small part of me, you know what I mean? So it wasn't like, where's the reverse when I was younger? That was my whole identity. And it was like, I need to do things amazing in these games for people to love me. And so then if I didn't do amazing things, they hate you. You know, so but that's where I found my like value and my worth.
Every single Queensland celebrations right now has Bloke on special. So if you're in Queensland, you want a case of Bloke, head into your local celebrations. If they don't have it, it's sold out, or just ask them politely, can you order some Bloke beer? Get in your local celebrations in Queensland, grab a case of Bloke. Let's get back to the chat. But yeah, take us back to a young fella, mate. Obviously, it says you were born in Auckland. Born in Auckland?
Yeah, I was born there.
But you lived south?
Yeah, so I grew up in Toulon, which is like a small town in the South Waikato. And Ice was one of my best mates. So me and him were best mates growing up. As I said, my cousin Sean Maitland was like the third guy hanging out with us. And then man, you had some epic rugby players come from Toulon with Richie McCaw, Kev Mialamu, just to name a couple, but there's been some awesome female athletes as well. So yeah, it's a cool little town.
What was it like growing up? Like, was it tough, or you didn't really notice it? You just enjoyed it? Like, what was it?
Yeah, like the thing is, bro, it's like it's a tough place to grow up, but when you grow up and you're from there, like you just don't know anything else. So it's like you don't know that it's tough or whatever, but I'm so grateful for growing up there because like we never went without anything, you know. We come from a very poor family and stuff like that, but the whole community was good, and you know, it was fun because so Ice's dad was our coach, and he treated us like professional footballers before professional sport was sort of a thing, you know what I mean, especially for kids. And I saw Ice say this on a reel or something on his Instagram the other day, and it was talking about he had 10 balls at his disposal. So he'd just go to the school, and he lived right next door to the school, and he'd just go there and kick. So his repetition and stuff like that, he just had so much more reps than everyone else. And he was a freak. And so I'd just be with him every day as well. And his dad would take us on these long runs. He'd drive his ute and run out to the mill, which was like, fuck, it was a big run. And we'd just have to run there. And just things like that, man. You're talking about like 8-9-year-old kids
doing like fitness,
full fitness road runs. He'd have the cones out on the field. we'd get there before training because he's the coach. He'd have cones out, and we'd be doing like running, passing drills, things like this as young kids, man. But it was a fun place to grow up. We always got up to mischief, and I was probably the most mischief out of all of us.
Oh, really?
At Ice, he was a smart ass of a kid.
Yeah.
But he never really got up to any sort of bad stuff. You know, then there was my cousin Sean. He's just the most innocent, like well-behaved kid.
Yep.
His mum's super disciplined. Then there was me, who like, I would just leave the house and not come back till nighttime. I just didn't really have many rules.
Yeah.
And so I'd always be out exploring. I had a little motorbike and stuff like this, and we'd double like 3 or 4 of us out to my cousin's house who lived on a farm, and you've got to go along the highway to get out there. So like just things like that, man. Like when you're a kid, if I had my little brother, he's 18, and I'd still be like, bro, he's 20 now, but when he was 18 or 16, I'd be like, bro, you're not doing that. Like there's no chance that you're riding a motorbike. You know what I mean? I was like 8, 9, 10.
Yeah. Far out.
So it's a whole different world growing up like that.
It's like interesting how like you'd be to your bro like 16 years old, you're not riding a motorbike or whatever.
Oh, for sure.
But at the same time, I'm sure you're probably like grateful for that freedom
100%.
growing up.
Yeah.
Being able to do stuff like that.
Yeah, and growing up like that, like as I said, so my younger brothers and sisters, like I freak out at them doing stuff, my little nephews and niece and stuff. Whereas everything I did, like man, even my sisters had different rules. Like because I was a boy. So I just got to go out and do whatever, and like so many dangerous things in that. But we lived this life, and we learned like sort of streetwise and street smarts at such a young age, And some of my friends that I've had over here or partners over the years, you just look at how they've sort of grown up, and they're not necessarily street smart, but they're super smart people. But then it's like some of the things that you see and you notice
certain vibes in certain scenarios,
exactly,
you're like, something's going on, you need to
oh, for sure. So it was a great place to grow up, bro.
Yeah, it's so true. Like if you haven't experienced that growing up, you really get like you are so surprised at how oblivious some people can be to some crazy situations. They just have got no idea what's going on, and you're going, bruh.
And see, and as you said, like with the vibe of people, like I swear I pick up on like body language, people's energy. Like I notice it, because it's like you've just been around that. Like I've been at parties and you see someone just acting a bit weird, and you're like, oh, that energy's towards me. And then it's like, so even as I go into like football, those sort of like growing up in that way kind of helps you out like in environments like a footy environment, because it's literally a big boys club, But like again, so my uncle was Sean's dad was my coach for rugby, and Isaac's dad was my league coach. So it was cool even being able to grow up like that, play rugby Saturdays, leagues Sunday, and just play as much sport. Like sport in Tukoroa was basically all you had. So it was like you got touch Monday, Wednesday, you got league and rugby training Tuesday, Thursday, and then you have something on Friday, Saturday rugby, Sunday league. So man, it was just like, and I always encourage all my nieces and nephews to play as many sports as they can. Just because I think from a social point of view, you get social skills playing sport, but also just if you end up focusing on one thing, that might not be what your DNA is best matched, you know? So
for sure, and like there's so many skills you can learn from different sports that you can transfer in.
100%.
So basically, from a young, like at what age did it start becoming apparent to you that like I've got a bit of talent, I'm putting myself standing out to my age group kind of thing?
Bro, like the honest answer with that is like from as far as I can remember, I always thought I was going to be a professional rugby player, and doesn't mean that the journey from there was smooth sailing, but it was just like for some reason there was something, and I just knew that that's what I was going to do. So like there'd be a team that you had like a rep team, and I'd make that rep team, or if I missed out on it, I would like work so hard. I'd be at the training. I'd go to training still, and then I'd get picked in the team because I was just, you know what I mean? So it was like there was no for me.
It was a relentless drive. Like
it was just like, but without, and that wasn't like something that I was like, okay, just turn up to training and you'll get picked. Like, it was just like, well, I just wanted to be there and play footy because that's all I wanted to do.
Yeah, okay.
So there was this thing in the back of my head that was like, you're going to be a footballer. I had no ifs or buts about it. And I remember having that conversation with my mum. She was like, you got to get a job. I was about 15 and I was going to turn 16. And she said, I need you to start looking for a job because when you turn 16, you have to pay board. I was like, Mum, I'm not going to work. I told you I'm going to be a rugby player. And she always used to say it to me, son, you can't put all your eggs in one basket. Yeah. You need a plan B. And I'd always be like, plan B is be a football player. And so she would kind of get upset with me.
Yeah, for sure.
And then so I remember when I got my first contract, just as I turned 16, and I was like, remember showing it to her and being like, she was like, oh, whatever, you know? So it was like when I kind of like made it, but like that's not even really making it, but it's just like
first step.
Got to a point, where it was like, hey, this is all happening. It's an actual possibility.
Yep.
So there's a piece of paper that's telling you that you have the opportunity and we're going to work with you for the next 2 or 3 years.
Yep. Who was it with?
The Reds.
The Reds.
So I had like a few league offers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It was like, I didn't want to move away. And I think the first one was Penrith. But I just didn't want to move away from my family.
Yeah.
And I think it would have been for like some SG ball sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I can't remember that long ago. There was Western Force and the Brumbies. Yeah. And I remember, so again, kind of goes back to my attitude, was like, I looked at the Western Force and they had Gitz there. The Brumbies had Stephen Larkham. And then the Reds had Berwick Barnes. And
Berwick Barnes.
Yeah, but see, like for me, I was just like, if I'm going to go head to head with someone that I think I can beat, like at this age, well, I think I'm like, I have better skill set than him and things like this.
I only say the great Berwick Barnes because he was at the Clydesdales when I was at the Broncos. He used to kill it in league. Like he was the next big thing at the Bronx.
And that was the thing. I didn't actually know who he was.
Oh, I swear.
So like at the time, but he was one of the best blokes you ever met and just super like, man, you talk about work ethic. Yeah. That dude, like
smart dude.
Yeah.
Smart
like,
dude.
Just an awesome dude.
Yeah.
Like he helped me out a hell of a lot, especially in my early years. And then he left to the Waratahs later on in his career. But I was like, okay, because he was young coming in. So I was like, I'm a fair bit young. I was like 3 years younger, I think. Yeah. Or maybe 4. But I was like, okay, he's young coming in and he's come from league. Larkham is Larkham. Yeah. Gitz is Gitz. They're one's the highest paid, the other one's one of the best 5'8" to play for the country. Yeah. So I was like, okay, I got to take on this young dude. That's how I'm gonna get that's how I'm gonna prove and get my start. Yeah. And so that's sort of why I chose the Reds, and also I just didn't want to move away from home. So I had just done that when I was younger, and I didn't really cope too well at the time. Like I moved out of home very young, and I was very independent. Like I was saying, like I was never at home when I was a young kid. Yeah. But moving away from my family was just a whole nother thing. So I ended up signing with the Reds. And
so did you move? So you moved out of home in your hometown?
No, well, when we were in Tukuroa, I moved to Brisbane to live with my auntie. Yeah, okay. And I was 13, turning 14.
Okay, so you'd experienced missing your family.
Yeah, I was super young too. Yeah. But like, again, I got there and I was fine. Like I had a good time in that. But yeah, I was so used to having my family, but I also was getting in a little bit of trouble too. Like nothing bad. Yeah. It was just like I was just the same things that I was doing in New Zealand, like roaming around and just like wagging school and stuff like this. You do that in Australia, it's a fair bit different, you know.
Yeah, like, especially like in Brizzy, built
big
up
city and
that.
So
wagging school. Oh man. Those were the days, bro. Yeah. Take me back to just a young innocent man. That's just the only worry I have is if the principal's going to know that I wasn't at school.
100%, bro. Man, we used to wag school so much, but
don't listen to that, kids. Stay in school.
Yeah, for sure.
Do your study. It's not a good thing. Okay, so when that Red signed you, did they say you can stay for a year and develop?
So basically, I was in high school. So my contract started like grade 12, which was 2006. So yeah, like I literally I was on scholarship And so when we had under 16s national championships, so that was, I was playing for Queensland. We go down to Rivalry and you play against all the schools and whatnot. I got a scholarship from there. Some of the Australian rugby scouts sort of got me, and Michael O'Connor was the talent ID guy at the time, him and Paul Crosser. And so they came to my house, spoke to my mum, and said basically, choose a school that you want to go to. And it was like TSS, Nudgee, and Churchy. And so Nudgee was like, I'll probably have to board because it's so far away. TSS, I definitely have to board. And Churchy, I was like, I can just get the bus there. And so I ended up choosing Churchy, and we won. I was there with Dave Pocock, and we won a premiership there. But I would go, so the following year when I started with the Reds, like properly, I would go to training in the morning, so like 7 till 9. Then I'd get changed into my school uniform, and I never used to want to get changed in the locker room because all the boys getting changed, and then I'd be putting school uniform on, and you know those private school uniforms, the hat and everything.
100%. Button-up shirt, ties.
Yeah, so I'll be outside, try and get changed quickly so no one see, and then I'd just walk up to the bus stop.
Yeah.
And the boys would drive past, beep out, and, mate, you want to ride? Kid, you want to ride? And I'd be like, oh, no, all good, you know, just real shy in that. So, that's sort of how that come about. And then...
do you remember, like, you rock up to your first professional setup? So you with the first grade squad at this stage?
Yeah.
What was the feeling like in regards to the intensity, the standard, all that kind of stuff?
The thing was, it was like, it's hard to sort of answer that because I'd been in the squad and that for like 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So I was there in 2005 when Wendell was there. But I wouldn't like participate fully because I was too young.
So they just kind of like kept you around.
Yeah, so I just go join and like, and I remember doing this, and Big Dale will probably have a laugh at this. I was sort of kicking the ball around, just mucking around on the end goal while they were doing 15 on 15. And I kick the ball up. And I kick it up and it comes off the side. I was trying to do a spiral ball.
Yep.
It comes off the side of my foot, and then there's this car parked like basically on the field sort of thing. And it goes up, and I'm watching. I'm like, oh shit, it's gonna hit this car. And I'm like, fuck. And then it lands like right next to it, hits the fence. Yeah. Makes a big noise, and he like walks over. Like, who the fuck did that?
Big Dell,
yeah,
he's a fucking big boy.
And he was like, and you know his energy and that.
Yeah.
Man, he's just walking around, and he's huge. I'm going, oh shit. And he calls me out. He's like, is that you? And I'm like, oh yeah. And then he just has a laugh with me. But I was like, I honestly thought he was gonna throw down with me. You know?
Yeah.
And then
that's his like he's almost trolling to it.
Yeah, well, he's just trolling me.
Yeah. But as a young kid, you're fuck.
Yeah, and then he's sort of called me out, and he's like, oh, I heard that you're like, you know, pretty good, like a bit of a superstar. You think you're the man, sort of thing. And I was like, oh, this I don't know, like, yeah, whatever you, like. And he's like, all right, let's go. Show me your step.
No way.
Yeah, and he sort of calls me out, and I'm too shy. And I'm like, oh, like, no, I don't want to step him, or like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he's like, full, like, marking me up.
Yeah.
And say, yeah, there's the outline sort of thing. And standing in front of me, this big dude. So I sort of try and step him, but I'm like, I don't really, because I was just a bit awkward.
Yeah.
Yeah, bro. So like, I was in and around that team for a while.
It's all about respect too. Like,
for sure, bro.
He's like Wendell.
He's Wendell. Like, to me, I'm like, I shouldn't even be talking to him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like going through, like, sort of then you come through, and it was like you only spoke to them if they spoke to you.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So like then
a little bit different now, but back then, bro,
a lot different now. But it was still quite intimidating. And he's quite being friendly to me. You know? And so I was just all shitting myself.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I was in and around that team. So then when I actually came in 2006, when I played my first game, like I'd been around those guys for ages.
So they've done a real good job at integrating you slowly rather than just rocking up. Because like a lot of rookies rock up out of school, and it's like such a culture shock that the standards, the amount of training you got to do, they're not ready for it, and they get broken in the first preseason.
Yeah,
and then you work out who's made of it and who's not made of it.
Exactly, man. And that was, I was the only one who was doing that though.
Yeah, okay.
So for the rest of the guys who are my age and that who came through, they had a bit of a tough run.
Yeah.
So a lot of the boys that I won the premiership with, like when you talk to them about their early years, it was a lot harder. Like it's a lot different to what I saw.
Yeah.
Because they were quite nice to me because I met them a fair bit, but also probably the position that I played, being a fly half.
Yeah.
You know, so Yeah, it was a good integration. Then I went and played my first game in Japan.
Yeah.
For the Reds against Japan. I think we beat them then.
So was this a trial match or was this a debut?
So back then it was like you could play. It wasn't a Reds cap, so you got a Queensland cap, and then you had like Super Rugby caps.
Okay.
So that was my first Queensland cap where I actually got the cap.
Yeah.
But it was because it was against an international team. It counts as a cap.
Okay. What do you remember? Was it expected, unexpected? Do you remember getting the phone call or sitting down in the office?
Yeah, like I knew I was going to play in that game because the year before that, in 2005, they were going to take me on the tour to Argentina. But there was a rule that came in then, which was like if you were under 18 in rugby, you weren't allowed to play. But it was like if you got picked in a test match, you could play. It was a real weird thing, so Super Rugby in that. Because I remember David Pocock was supposed to debut for the Force, but he was still 17. And then there was this massive thing that happened, so then they changed the rule because it was like, it just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
You're old enough to play test match footy, but you couldn't play Super Rugby.
Yeah.
So, yes, I was going to go on that tour, but I didn't end up going. And then I went on the Japan tour. So it was exciting. Like, I don't really remember how I feel because it was kind of like I was sort of saying to you, I kind of expected it.
Yeah.
And that was my mindset, was like, I would have remembered how I felt if I didn't get chosen. But getting picked was kind of like, oh yeah, like I should get picked.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and I kind of had
natural
that
progression of what you've been doing the last
exactly,
few
bro.
years.
And everything, like, so you go and play first 15, then you get picked for Queensland, then you get picked for Australian schoolboys. It's like a progression.
Yeah,
So which you kind of expect.
yeah,
And then when you start to expect things, that's where you kind of fall into a few traps as well.
yeah. It's not until you get older you appreciate how. I mean, obviously you worked extremely hard, but how fortunate you were. Like you weren't injured. You had people that really rated you, the way you played, kind of thing.
For sure.
Whereas you're right. Like when you're younger, it's almost like I should already be there. Like why not? Like I'm like just from personal experience. Like I was wigging out because I hadn't debuted as a teenager yet, and I'd only been playing rugby league for 2 years. So I can only imagine yourself. It's almost like you're in a rush to get there.
Yeah, bro. Well, like I had signed a contract, you know what I mean? So it was like, oh, well, I'm going to play. You know, and if I don't play, well, what's going on?
What's doing it?
You know, so yeah. But it's funny you mentioned that, bro, because it's like everything as a kid is like a rush. Like you're like, I have to get there. And I remember Dan Carter.
Yeah.
Like he played, I think he was like 20 maybe, I think, or 21, sorry, when he debuted. I have to check that fact, that when he debuted for the All Blacks. And I was like, oh, okay, so Dan Carter, fuck, like that's the benchmark. You got to. So then it was like my whole motivation at that time was to try and play for Australia or play Super Rugby while I was at high school. And then, and I'd seen Benji do it. So I was like, okay, if I don't do it, then I'm not as good as him. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it was like, there was so much comparison, but I remember doing those things. Yeah. Like, and working it out, like getting Dan Carter's age. Okay, boom, boom, boom. All right, sweet. If I get to this at this age, then I've done it. Yeah. Yeah. You know, or then, and so then I debuted at 20. Yeah.
For Wallabies?
Yeah, for the Wallabies. Yeah. And I debuted at, I can't remember if I was 17 or 18, 2006 for the Reds.
Do you remember the feeling of that debut for the Reds, or is it just a blur to you?
No, I definitely remember that because it was kind of that moment where, and again, I don't know if this is just as a kid, you try and build it up to be something, because I thought that like those things were supposed to be special, because you hear it whenever you hear someone speak on the television or something like that in an interview. They're like, oh, the feeling when I got called up and said that I was going to play. I didn't really have that, but I was kind of like, shit, yeah, okay, I was building it up for myself. Yeah. And then it was like, oh yeah, Suncorp playing at the stadium and things like that. But then when we ran out for our first game, like this was when the Reds were trash. And the stadium had like, and at the time, 20,000 people wasn't much. You know, because you're watching Broncos games of 45, like basically sellouts every week. So I was like, in some ways, kind of disappointed, bro. Because I got out here and I was like,
because you'd imagined that big stadium full.
Exactly. And that was like my, like, how I interpreted what my debut should have been. Yeah. And that goes back and sort of shows you how egotistic I would have been at that time to think that it was going to be special because I was playing.
Yeah.
You know, is it? You know what I mean? So like,
Yeah.
I get out there and it was still so much fun. I scored a try. Will scored a try. So I had so much fun, and then just got schooled by Andre Pretorius, who was like the South African number 10.
Yeah.
And so we were winning the game, and we probably should have won it. When I look back at that game, I remember just we're under pressure, stuck in our corner, and he was just putting left foot torps, right foot torps, and just pinning us in our corner for like the last 10 minutes. And we were up on the scoreboard. And we just couldn't get out of there because Will's throwing the ball back to me. I'm trying to kick it out of there, like shanking these kicks into the stands, like, and they just put the pressure on us, and they end up winning the game, bro.
It's that experience, bro.
Exactly,
just
man.
Building pressure, pressure.
And I couldn't work it out how he was doing it because I was like, it just felt like every time we got the ball, I was standing on my end goal.
Yeah.
But yeah, like that again, it was such a cool experience. But that year for me, like when I think back to that year, it should have been this exciting year where, you know, your dreams are all coming true. But it was like this weird type of blur because we were going so bad at the time, and every week we were just getting pumped. But like to me, I was still having so much fun, but you can't show that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so it was like
100%.
this really awkward.
Because you're in your first year, like life's incredible. You can't believe it, but you're getting pumped, so you're not allowed to be rolling around.
Exactly, bro.
Celebrating.
Like for me, as a young kid, getting paid money to come and play rugby, and all your bonuses, like you're hitting these bonuses, so you're getting more money, and it's like they're just giving you money to play.
Yeah.
But then we're getting smacked every week. So it was just like this really weird, like whenever I sit down and think back to that year, it was just this real mix of emotions where I probably didn't even know how to deal with it because it was like I wanted to do certain things. I wanted to go out and enjoy. I wanted to party after, but we'd get banned from going and drinking. So then we'd be like, oh, I want to go. So we'll sneak out and drink because, you know, it's just young kids.
Well, you want to celebrate the achievements.
Yeah, every game, like just being out in the field.
Well, it's funny you say that because I'm not sure if you remember. I don't know whether you won or you snuck out. I'm not going to snitch on you. But I remember seeing it. I met you first at the Normby, 2008, and ever since then, like whenever someone like we might talk about yourself or whatever, I'm like, bro, I met him like years and years ago, and like sometimes you meet people that are guns, and it's just like, bruh, relax, like you're a fucking Derek, like just chill out. But I just was so impressed by how humble you were and how well we got along. And so ever since then, I've always said, bro, he's a fucking legend. Like he's a legend. And it's just from that one meeting.
But I remember those things. Like, so we'd always bump into you guys at the Normby. The
great Normby.
And like, I feel like I got along so well with you boys and that. And it was like, again, because I sort of come through as a league player as well. Yeah. And so like I loved league. Yeah. I wanted to play league so bad. But it just wasn't like I was doing my thing in rugby and sort of getting through that journey. So it's funny that you mentioned that, like going through the Normby and stuff like that. So there's a lot of memories from there.
100%. And these are like Broncos glory days too.
Yeah, for sure.
Just come off a premiership. 2008, we probably could have got close. But yeah, I still remember it to this day, fucking at the Normby having a chat to you and just like, as I said, sometimes you can meet some young fellas that are killing it and you're like, oh man, like,
bro, you were killing it though.
Well, I hope I wasn't a dickhead.
No. So, no, to be fair, honestly, like I remember someone saying like, oh, because you were killing it, bro. Like you were like lighting it up every week, and then like a few boys, like, oh, he's like, I don't know, he's like this bit arrogant, things like this. And when I met you, and I was like, wow, this dude's the furthest thing from arrogant, you know? He's
mate, honestly, I don't know. Maybe it's just would standoffish. I don't know, but yeah, I still remember it. Like just specifically remember it. It was a very good experience, bro. And as I said, like anytime we talk about it's funny how like if you just be good to one person,
100%,
that can just last for so long.
Man, it's crazy, bro. Because that's the world that we live in, right? And like as a youngster, you don't realize that. So it's like all of our schoolmates at some point, like let's say you're good friends, they're going to be something in the future. Yeah. And it's like, so any person that you come across, whether you treat them good or bad, like that can definitely have a response directed at you in the future. But it also can, like you might not ever see them again or cross paths. But it's like, that's why for me now, I try the best that I can to have a positive impact on just when I meet people and just be myself rather than, okay, because I used to feel like I had to be something. And so sometimes that was like, oh, try and what a superstar was supposed to be like. That's why I'll try and act like this. Oh, you got to be like this, humble like this. So I try and, whereas if you just be yourself and if that's who you are, well, then it'll come across. But you know what I mean? Like, so especially in our sport.
Yeah, oh, bro, 100%, 100%. So you get through your first couple of years of Reds, you make your debut for Australia, 2008.
Yeah, 2008.
2008. So that same year. Do you remember how that all come about?
Yeah. So like, when we got the call up that we were going to come into the squad and like, but go on tour, because I'd been in the squad in that like a fair few times.
Yep.
But this was like you're coming in to go on tour like officially, and it was like, oh, okay, now this is like
legit.
Yeah, and for me, like I was just like, I wasn't sure if I was going to play or anything, but I was excited, man. And I remember when I got told I was going to play against Italy, we're sitting on the bench. Then I actually didn't think I was going to get on because the game was tight, and I think we were losing. Like we were losing to Italy in Padova, and it was like maybe 20 minutes to go. So I thought, we're not going to get on because they're just going to keep all of us like that. They said we're going to debut off.
Yeah.
Because we don't want to lose this game. And then, the manager's like, Quade, wait. And then I ignored him the first time because I was like shitting myself.
Really?
Yeah, because I went, oh, fuck, it's happening. And I was like, I don't want to go on because we're losing.
And you don't want to stuff up?
Yeah, and I was like, I don't want to screw up.
Yeah,
and like, fuck, do I know the plays? Oh, shit. And then he's like, yelled at me, get up. I stood up. I was like, fuck. And then I was like, wanted some of the other boys to come with me. And he's like, yeah. And then he's called Poe and some of the other boys. So then I calmed down.
Yeah.
But then the moment I ran onto the field, I was like, nah, this is easy.
Yeah.
Like if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like
it's your job, bro.
the worst place to sit is on the bench.
Yeah.
And it's like you're watching people run and you see hits and you're like, oh, I don't know if I can take those. You know what I mean? Like you're thinking they look harder. And then when you're on the field, someone runs into you or tackles you, get straight back. You know what I mean? So it's like it's such a weird feeling.
Bro, I watch NRL now and I'm like, how did I do that? I don't know how I did that. You know what I mean?
Fucking knows,
bro, how the fuck did I do that? The size of these boys.
Just running into and it's like when you see someone now, like I'll see some of the young NRL boys in it. They'll walk past and I'm like, fuck. Like, I don't know if I could tackle. You know what I mean? But then when you're on the field,
it's just different. And so what do you remember anything when you ran onto the field?
Yeah, I just remember running on the field and like just got straight into it. But it was like, so I scored a try, which basically put us ahead in the game. And so then we end up winning the game. And the funny thing about that try is like, I was telling Gitz not to pass me the ball.
No way.
Yeah, like, because there was this, like a play and I was sort of like, there's just a brick wall.
Yeah.
And I was like, play them up. Whoa, he threw me the ball. And he threw me the ball and it was just like reaction. So I just caught it, guy shot, I just stepped him, ran through a space that Sterling Mortlock sort of hit into someone and the guy tried to just go like sell a penalty.
The good old sell.
And he sort of made another hole for me. So I stepped one guy, saw that hole, ran through it, stepped another, and the covering guy was coming, I stepped him and scored the try. And like the feeling, bro, like, you know, and that's what I said is like my whole life at that point was about those type of moments. Like that was my dream.
Yeah.
And like I remember scoring the try, boys jumping on me, went up and going back, we win the game. And then Robbie during the week, he come up to me, he's like, oh mate, that was a good try. And he goes, look, you can't just step everyone because at some point someone's just going to read that, so you got to get used to step and accelerate, go.
Okay.
You know, because I would just go bang, bang, up, try and step more people.
Almost like wait for them to
like I would want to step them. Like because it was like you'd fool them, but it was a bit of fun too. But it was like I knew I could guarantee that I could step them.
Yeah.
But I didn't know if I could gas them.
Yeah. Okay.
So that would be like my stress.
Yeah.
And I remember him saying that to me, and it sort of sat in my mind. And like I see guys now, like in my own team, they'll like step, 4 people or something. And I'm like, bro, you just like ran away from all of us.
Yeah, no structure.
Yeah,
Everything's
and now
fucked up
everything's
now.
thrown out.
Yeah.
Like if you had gone step, and then accelerated, you might have broke through, but you would have got tackled in a place that's like beneficial for us.
Yeah.
So my mindset, I'm like, I get what Robbie was sort of saying now.
Yeah.
Which is weird, you know, because it's
Was
like,
that the time were you like a bit taken back?
I was pissed off.
Yeah, okay.
I was like, bro, I just scored, and I know I can beat everyone.
Scored the match winner,
Yeah.
debut.
So I remember just being like, but like, I was like, oh yeah, cool. But I remember walking away like, I don't understand it.
Yeah.
Like, if I can step the guy and score the try, why not just do that rather than like try and go around him and him tackle me? But like from the point of what I guess what he was trying to get at was what we just said is like, hey, like at some point, if you just keep stepping everyone, like our team's got no idea where you're going to go.
Yep.
And if you keep doing that, they're going to start reading you and going, okay, he never runs. He just always steps in, so I'll wait for him.
And let's isolate him, especially
Exactly.
in union. Getting isolated is
100%,
like
bro. It's the worst thing
ever.
you can do.
And I only spent about 3 months in union, so it's coming from a fucking bum. Okay, so in 2009, so you debut 2008.
Yeah.
And then you play against France and Wales. And then
So we went Italy. Wales was our last game, I think. But Wales, I came off the bench like a minute into the game, bro. Sterling Mortlock got knocked out.
okay.
Had a head clash.
Yep.
And same sort of vibe, bro. I was like, I remember being on the bench and then got told, you're going on.
Yeah.
Like 2 minutes into the game.
Wow.
I was like, bro, like, you sure? Like, put someone else on. And got on the field, run on the field, and I remember making the call. So I run in and I said, yo, here's the call. And like, the Welsh Stadium, Millennium Stadium, has a roof in it. And their fans like sell it out every time, but they sing. It's so loud.
Yeah.
So I run on the field and I make a call, and the boys like, what? And I'm like yelling, and then they're like, man, I can't fuck. And then Gitz walks over to me and sprays me. Fucking can't hear you, mate. Like, tell us what you. And then I was like, pull my mouth guard and I yell back at him. He's like, that's better. And
right.
yeah, so that was a fun game, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that to me was like sort of a moment where I thought, okay, international rugby's not as like hard as what I thought, like that it's sort of made out to be, if that makes sense, without sounding arrogant. It was more so like from the perspective of like there's not much difference from that in Super Rugby, but it's just the moments are much more fine and the collisions are just that much heavier, you know what I mean? So it was like, but I was expecting like to be on the field and be like, you're the worst player on the field.
Yeah, overawed by the
Yeah,
whole
like
situation.
that's how I was expecting it to be. But when I got on the field, it was like, hey, this is kind of, it's not easy by no means, but it was like, oh, it's not like they're not just in your face every moment that you expect it. Because
And you've got quality around you too.
exactly, bro. So and that's the
they
thing.
help your job.
You've got the best players in the country all around you.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, there might be less time, but you actually have more time because these guys know exactly what they're doing or where they're supposed to be, the ruck speed and everything. Everything's just so much easier for you.
And then so you played at Wembley the next game?
Oh, yeah, that was for Barbarians. So Barbarians against Australia versus the Barbarians.
Yeah.
And that was like my first start.
Yeah. And in Wembley.
Yeah, that was crazy.
Think of a cute young fella from...
It was like, well, that was the whole thing, right? Everyone was just like Wembley Stadium.
Yeah.
You know, this is like, and we got there, the ground was just like carpet, but the whole environment, everything that it was meant to be, it was and more. And then playing against the Barbarians is just like, because I never played the All Blacks or anything like that at this point. So you had like All Blacks in that team, like some of the best players from all over the world, South Africans, the English, things like this, all in one team. And so when I grew up as a rugby fan, I loved watching Barbarian games because it was like that thing of watching fantasy teams, because you had just the best players all come together.
Yeah.
So, you know, there'd be like Joe Lomu on the wing. There'd be, you know, then you get like of recent times, like Brian Habana playing with Manonu, things like this. So as a fan of the game, being able to watch those, but then now come up against it, like, man, I was in heaven at that point. but I broke my finger in the game leading up to it. So the game against Wales, and I thought I wasn't going to play because I literally couldn't catch a ball. Had like a heap of stitches. The bone came out of the skin in that, and I was like, nah, I got to play this game.
Yeah.
And I was like catching balls like in my forearm and like
and it's
shoveling
always in your head
passes.
too. Like you're always thinking about it.
But I just didn't want to be left out of that game because it was like my first start.
Yeah.
So I was like, nah, like just inject it, do whatever. Like, I'm playing this game.
Yeah.
So yeah, bro, that was like a pretty cool moment, especially like on Wembley as well.
Yeah. Like Wembley Stadium.
It's one of the best.
So 2009 that New Zealand tried to get you across the Warriors?
Yeah.
Or New Zealand Rugby?
Yeah, New Zealand Rugby, bro.
Yeah.
So New Zealand Rugby sort of approached me 2009.
And NRL clubs as well?
Yeah, there's a few NRL clubs.
Okay,
so that was like a decision period for me because I debuted for the Wallabies and stuff like this. And sort of everything was sort of falling together. NRL clubs and some New Zealand clubs. And I was like, oh, yo, like some of these clubs, I was like, this will be pretty cool to go back and play. But with that, I just didn't want to leave Australia. I just didn't want to leave my family. And like everything that I had done sort of coming through was with all the guys that I was now playing with at the Reds, now playing with at the Wallabies. Like they were my mates and that, you know. So like you play under 16s, high school, all that sort of stuff. And for me, like I was always quite like a shy person. So going into a new situation for me was like quite scary. Like it was quite daunting. So I'd always avoid those sort of situations. Like even in social situations, like going to a new school, I was like, nah, like I hated the fact, like even when I started at Churchy, I didn't want to go to school because I just didn't want to have to try and find new friends or walk around at lunchtime on my own, you know what I mean? And everyone's sort of looking at you, oh, who's this bloke?
Who's the new guy kind of thing?
So like I was really quite socially like scared of those situations. So when I looked at going to rugby league at that young age, to rugby union in New Zealand, the reason why I sort of stayed was because I was comfortable where I was, and I was like, and which is now you look back on that, it doesn't mean that that's a good or bad thing, you know, like it's like being uncomfortable is a way of growth. But yeah, I ended up just staying here just for those simple reasons.
Yeah. Obviously, you grew up playing league. When was the most serious time that you really considered coming to league?
So when, I think it was 2009, and we're just going through sort of renegotiation of my contract, and or maybe it was 10. I think it was 2010, and like I had an epic year with the Reds, and I loved that we were playing epic footy. I was starting for the Wallabies and everything, and the Eels came to me. And so I'd had a few meetings. Like after I had this initial chat with them, I met with them, and so then I was down in Wallaby camp, and they come pick me up from my hotel to drive out to Parramatta to go have a look at the facility, and no one knew about it. And so what happened was, and I was like, man, no one can know about this. I don't want anyone to find out because I'm in camp and we have a game basically tomorrow. And so he's picked me up, we've driven out there, and basically the amount of money that was on offer, like I'm like, yeah, I'm signing. Like basically I was like, and speaking to Coda and he was like, bro, like we said, like they came to the table and they came to us with that amount. We didn't even have to negotiate.
Wow.
So it was like, okay, like I'm gonna sign. So we basically agreed to go there. Like I'm driving in the car, talking about it. I'm like, yeah, no, I'm keen. Like I'm definitely gonna come. So forth. We get to the stadium to go look around the facilities, and they're sort of showing me where I'll most likely live and everything like that. And then as I'm about to get out of the car, like some journos and that sort of come, and I like shit myself and I back out of it. I jump in the car and I'm like, oh bro, I gotta go home. Like take me back. I'm ringing Coda. I'm like, bro, like this is going to be in the paper tomorrow. And he was pretty pissed off too, because he was like, in some ways that's kind of like forcing my hand, you know what I mean? And
yeah, it's a tactic.
yeah, it's a tactic of, and so this was kind of before that stuff was happening a lot, because like you think 2010, like that's when it was kind of just becoming like mainstream type,
Like using the media.
yeah,
for an agenda.
you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
and where athletes were kind of becoming like people like in the community like that were celebrities rather than just athletes. And so this kind of like made me feel, I guess, that used in some ways, but also them trying to force my hand to make a decision, which I had already basically made the decision that I wanted to come. I just didn't like how that sort of sat. And I got back to the hotel. It was like pretty much a done deal. Yeah, that was how that all sort of transpired. And then I ended up going inside, and we get on the phone to Coda and that, and then the ARU obviously kind of find out about it, and then we end up having a conversation, and then they agree to pay me basically to say a little bit more than what I was getting from the Eels, and I ended up staying. And then the rest was kind of history, because I went on to 2011.
Yeah.
You know, we won the comp and stuff like that, but I always have that in the back of my mind where I'm like, man, I was that close. Like I was literally agreed. When that media stuff happened, I felt, and I've always been like this as a person, as I've never liked people trying to force me to do things. And so it felt like that was probably the main thing that made me turn my back to it, because it was just like, you try to push me into a corner like this, you know, and I'm like, I'm not going to allow you to do that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to stay here and sign here.
Yeah.
Because in my head, I thought, okay, well, I can always go to an NRL club next year after the World Cup.
Yeah.
So I don't need to go here.
Yeah. Okay.
Like I'm going to get paid well regardless. And that's why it kind of like, so then the following year, every year it was like something that came up.
Yeah.
And every year I more so wanted to test it out, but then the money in union at the time was just like too much.
Yeah.
And like, so for me taking a risk to go play rugby league, so through COVID, there was like a few opportunities where I was going to play.
Yeah.
But again, like I was getting paid in Japan, like a lot of money to play 6 games a year in second division. So you think about how like much that was going to prolong my career.
Massively coming to the NRL. Holy shit.
But the competitor in me wanted to do that. And I just knew that where I was as a person at that time, I knew that it wouldn't be about an ego thing. So I really wanted to come and play league, but the discrepancy between the money was just too large. Like, you know what I mean? So I was like, and like the money wasn't bad. So, but it just, the separation was just too much that I was like, I wasn't willing to turn that down.
Yeah. Every single Queensland celebrations right now has Bloke on special. So if you're in Queensland, you want a case of Bloke, head into your local celebrations. If they don't have it, it's sold out, or just ask them politely, can you order some Bloke beer? Get into your local celebrations in Queensland, grab a case of Bloke. Let's get back to the chat. When was the first, so was it 2010, the first All Blacks game against All Blacks?
Oh, no, I think it was 2009, but I was like, kind of like off the bench.
Off the bench.
Yeah, so like 2010, I was like starting every game. And
what was that feeling like? Going like the All Blacks, boom.
Bro, well, that to me, and that's sort of where like a lot of my run-ins with Richie McCaw and stuff sort of stem from, because, and I've spoken to him like since all the issues and that, but it was like, he was like, I idolized him growing up. You know, to every New Zealander, it was like, that was the dude. And you like, just wanted to meet him, you know what I mean? But now I'm playing for Australia. So like in the Australian like locker room and stuff like this, everybody's like the opposite. They just want to kill him and that. But I'm like, nah, he's my favorite player, like him and Dan Carter. You know what I mean? So then I'm like,
for sure.
But then so I kind of was like, oh, I've got to develop this. You know, I've got to hate him too.
Yeah.
And so then in the game in Hong Kong, like I clean him out and he's sort of on the ground. I clean him out and I'm sort of standing over him. He just like kicks off with his foot, sort of get me off, and I was like, oh, he kicked me.
Yeah.
You know, so then I like sort of said a few words to him, and then the next I sort of following him around, like in my head, I just wanted to get him back.
Yeah.
And then we ended up scoring the try that tied the game, like in overtime. And he sort of made the tackle on O'Connor as he was sort of falling over, and I come flying in and I give him a shove.
Yeah.
And that sort of kicked that off.
Yeah.
You know, because I gave him a shove and said some words to him, and then Muliaina, a few other boys come in and sort of pushed me off. But it was like, in my head, when I look back, I'm like, that was just my emotion that I had built up to have some type of motivation against this guy.
Yeah, almost like convinced yourself, like, I can feel how everyone else is
Yeah,
feeling
like
in the
I
Wallabies,
hate
I
him,
guess. Yeah,
you know, but it was like, when I remember walking off the field and I was so like embarrassed and disappointed because I was like, fuck, like how do I go and get a photo with him now?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, because he thinks I'm just a little prick and
Yeah.
hates me.
Yeah.
You know, so it was just a real weird sort of situation. And the first time standing in front of the haka, it was like this real weird feeling because it was like, I don't hate the haka. I actually love it. Every time I watch it and see it now, I get like goosebumps.
Yeah.
It's something that I did as a young kid. I was part of, you know, and I grew up loving that. And so every time I see that from my culture and that, like I don't, like people will call me plastic in that, you know, but I grew up in that and I still love and respect it. So when I stand on the field, you know, man, in some ways I was singing it along, you know, because it was like, it runs through my blood and that. And, but I have to hate it.
Yeah.
That's how I felt.
Well,
That I had to hate it. Whilst I wasn't Australian.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, I love watching the haka for sure, but when it's directed at Australia, it makes me like, it makes me kind of
For sure.
get up, like, you're coming at us, you want to have, like, that's how I feel naturally. So it must be so conflicting for you where you're kind of like, it's in your blood, like absolutely in your blood.
Exactly, bro.
But you've got a passion for playing for Australia.
But see, when I was young, the difference is that, see, now I am Australian. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like, say if you get someone who's like born in Greece and grown up here, they're still Greek.
Yeah.
But they're Australian.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
100%.
it's like, and that's the thing with our country, and I guess where the Wallabies are at now is like, it's an important time because we're actually really focusing on and sort of appreciating the multiculturalism that we have here in Australia.
Yeah.
So even with some of our identity stuff and the Wallabies and that, like paying homage to a lot of the Pacific Island nations and that, because there's a lot of guys in our team that are Pacific Island heritage, but they're Australian.
Yeah.
So it doesn't mean that you can't be Samoan or you can't be Tongan. You got to be one or the other. No, like that's your heritage and where you're from. So for me, I've sort of got to that same point where I'm like, man, I love watching the All Blacks. And when I watch the All Blacks play, I'm supporting them.
Yeah.
When I play against them, well, it's a game.
Yeah.
Like when I watch the Wallabies play and I'm not involved, I love that. Whenever I support the Olympics and that, you watch all the Australian events and that.
Yeah.
If I see a Kiwi event on, I'll watch that too. You know, so it's like, it's an interesting position to be in. But more that I've worked on my own identity and who I am as a man, the easier that's become.
Yeah.
Because back then, I actually didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if I should be on that side and being part of that, or did I feel worthy to be like Australian? You know what I mean? And I had people that would say that from both sides of the camp. You know? So it was an interesting time for me. But now, like I'm very sure of who I am.
Yeah.
What I stand for and what I represent. So I have no issues if I'm watching the haka, appreciating that. And then singing being part of the Australian Wallabies as well.
Yeah.
So it's I find it easy now, but back then, yeah, bro, it was
would have been tough, so young, and like you're trying to prove yourself and
exactly
all that kind of stuff. I mean, you look at league, like a perfect example is Josh Papali'i. You know, he has played for Australia, been one of Queensland's best forwards for the last 10 years or at least 5 years.
for sure.
And then he changed to Samoa. And is anyone really going to question the passion that he played with for Australia? You can't. The runs are on the board. Like you cannot question. Papali'i gave everything he could ever give for Queensland and Australia, but he wanted to play for his heritage, and it's like, fair enough.
It's just one of those things that's been, I guess, because Australia and New Zealand are so close, that it's like kind of an awkward situation. No one questions it if you're Croatian, and you moved here when you were 10 or 15.
Yeah, it's a good
point. You know what I mean? Or like, or
that's
vice
a really
versa.
Good point. Because we are so. It's weird because like we're so competitive as nations, but we're actually. I mean, the Anzacs, we are so close. Like, if anything ever happened, we'd be straight together. Sure. So, what about with the fallout with that whole situation? Was that the first time you'd really dealt with like media just fucking?
Yeah, bro. Well, like, man, when I look back at it now, and if I was to have to go through that again, man, like it's crazy to think that I was 22 at that stage,
young, bro.
And I honestly didn't know how. And I said at the time, "Oh, no, I'm fine. Like, I'm brushing it off." But it affected me hugely,
massively,
because it was just bullying from the media.
Yeah,
like, I got targeted like it was everywhere. Like, I'm talking on every news channel, front page of the papers every day.
Crazy, bro.
It was huge, man. And so when I arrived to the World Cup, like, we had so much expectation on us, you know, because we had just the way we were playing, the way we had gone about the Super Rugby season, things like that. But I had an even bigger battle, which was against the media.
Yeah.
You know, and like, it's like, if someone had to go through that now, like, I don't know how, if I had to go through that now, I think I would cope with it a whole lot easier, because I'd just call it out.
Yeah. And
I'd say, what's going on here? But I was, and I'm actually stronger as a person, but I still don't know if I would survive it, like, and thrive in it. But back then, like, obviously I sank. Like, I just didn't know how to cope with it. I didn't have any like coping mechanisms or support. Yeah. And kind of like bullying back then, it just was like not a thing. Yeah, it didn't really exist.
It was almost like, deal with it. You're an athlete.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you know, who cares? You're just an athlete. This is part of the gig. And it's like, well, hang on a sec. There's part of the gig, and then there's part of the gig. Like, some of this stuff is absolutely outrageous. Yeah. And when you actually like look back, like, what actually happened, like, you bit a niggle in a massive game against the All Blacks. Like, sorry for being super competitive. Like, it just, anyway. So this was heading into the World Cup. You were kind of dealing with it. So heading into that World Cup, like, was it because of that negativity, did you still really enjoy the World Cup though? Because it would have been your first one.
Well, and again, like, that's the hard thing about it, is that, like, when I look back at it, a lot of it's sort of marred by this. And then my performances, like, there was some good performances, some like average ones. But it was like, when we played against New Zealand, man, I played terrible. But I take that back, and I would never blame that on like the media or anything like that. But I take that back to something that we spoke about earlier, is that my lifestyle at that point, how I lived every day, there was no structure, there was nothing in my life that was going to allow me to be consistent. So I had a good game in the World Cup, then I had a bad one. And then, so like, you don't know when the good or bad's going to come. So a bad game came against New Zealand because, again, there's a lot more pressure on there. So the media's hounding me, hammering, more pressure. They're the best team in the world. They're the home team. And so then, as I said, me not living a consistent lifestyle, consistent preparation, things like that, well, my result was either going to be up here or down here. And it happened to be down here. Yeah. So, yes, I look back at that and say that, kind of, we compare that to my first game back against South Africa. I went into that game knowing that I'm going to play well, but not knowing that I'm going to win the game. And we still could have lost that game. Yeah. So the fact that I went into that All Blacks game, like, am I going to play well? Oh, man, like, I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I know I have the ability. Yeah. But this game, there's a lot on the line. Yeah. So then my first kick in that game, I kicked the ball out in the full. Yeah, wow. Like, so then you just sort of, from that point on, you're already starting like below. Yeah. So everything, so you think about some of the decisions you make because you want to get back to even or
you're
above.
chasing it. You're chasing
right off the bat. Yeah. You know, so like that was a really tough time for me. And then I finished that off with an ACL injury.
Yeah, wow.
In the third and fourth game. And the third and fourth game was one of the games I was playing up here. 'Cause again, no pressure, nothing. I just played a bad game. So what do you do after you play a bad game? You work hard, you prepare, you do everything. You know what I mean? So, and that's the thing for me is like, I talk about that a lot, is that when things are going well, that's the most vulnerable time. It's the hardest time because you either kick back and see. I got to a point in 2011 where everything I touched on the football field just come off. And so like the creativity, things like that, I just kicking balls on my end goal.
Yep. You won the Super Rugby title that year as well?
Yeah, we won it. And it was like hardly broke a sweat type thing.
Yeah,
like we were just winning games. Like we knew we were going to win games even if we were behind.
Yeah, wow.
The final was a hard game against the Crusaders. And like, again, but just for some reason we knew we were going to win. But what that did to me was like make me just think that, I've figured it all out now. See, I'm at this level.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to stay there.
Yeah.
So, whereas you get to a certain level through work, right?
Yeah.
Now, how do you stay at that level? Through more work.
Yeah.
So it's actually when you get to the top, the work's harder because you're trying to stay at that level. So that's got to be your normal. Whereas, and this is a big point for me and something that, again, that when I have conversations with younger athletes and that is when you work hard, say like, a lot of people use preseason as, I'll get fit. And if you listen to any media interviews with boys in preseason, you know, it's the fittest I've ever been. I'm in the best shape of my career. And it's like, bro, like you might feel that way because you just had time off, so you feel good.
Yeah.
And you're starting to train again. But 6 weeks or 8 weeks of preseason is not enough foundations.
Yeah.
So
years.
Exactly, bro. And so that's essentially me for that game against South Africa. I had years to prepare for it.
Yeah.
Think about Olympic athletes. They have 4 years to try and shave off 0.1 of a second.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, the way I look at it is that if this is you come in at preseason and you get to here, okay, has to be your new zero. So that if that's your zero and you come into preseason every year, you're using that 8 weeks to sharpen your tools. But this is your lifestyle, has to be at that level. Because otherwise you're just a part-time athlete.
Yeah.
So being a footy player in that is all based around your lifestyle choices, and you make choices based on who you want to be. Not, okay, footy's starting now, I'll use that 6 weeks to try and get in shape.
Yeah. It's interesting, like, you're right in regards to people see it almost as in blocks, like the preseason, get fit, then I got a season.
I try and hold it.
Yeah, try and hold it. Whereas like, and this is just a much lesser example, but because I've been doing sport like my whole life, if I start training, my muscle, like my body just goes boom,
100%.
straight back into it. And that's not to say like I'm some fucking hero or whatever. That's because like, the last 28 years of my life or whatever.
For sure. You're conditioned to it.
Like my body just is conditioned to it. And you take that even to a higher extent. Like one story I got is, so we were doing a preseason at the Broncos, fucking super tough. And this is, you know, peak everyone. We got all the best players, and so in preseason, usually around December is when you start getting your PBs.
Yeah.
Darren Lockyer, at the end of December. Lockyer, he played for Australia, all that kind of stuff. He played all season, killed it. I think it might have been like one of his years where he won everything. He came back to the first session of fitness. The first session, and we're talking Throbbit, like the fittest, strongest blokes in the country. It's the Broncos' heyday. First session, got the second fastest, fittest time out of everyone in his first session. And that's when I was like, that's why he's the GOAT. Like he's rolling in. We've been getting towed up for 8 weeks by everything's controlled.
Yeah.
We're paying millions of dollars to get us in good shape. He rolls in and just goes boom, second best time at everyone.
But see, and what that says to me though is, because everyone goes, he just came in and did that. Nah. See what he does every day.
Yeah.
How he lives every day. Yeah. So it's like what he does what he eats.
Yeah.
What he does, so he goes and trains. So for me, even when I'm on holiday, like during this period now, like being injured, I could just do no training. Like if I didn't want to train tomorrow, I have rehab and that, I could just go, nah, but that only affects me. right? So it doesn't really affect the physio or anything like that.
Yeah.
They'll be annoyed that I don't cope.
Yeah.
But essentially it's only affecting me. But that's a choice that you make based on what sort of lifestyle you live. And so going on that point with Lockie, it makes so much sense because you got a guy like Bowden Barrett, and this was all going around the rugby world last year. He comes back to the first session where they do a Bronco, and he runs like 4:11 in the Bronco.
Yeah.
Like 4:11 in the Bronco. Man, that's like...
For the listeners, what's a Bronco?
Oh, so Bronco's that 20 meter out and back, 20, 40, 60
Up
out
20,
and back.
Up 20, up 40, up 60, and you do it 5 times.
5 times.
Yeah.
So
411 is flying,
Just
bro.
look at those splits, bro. Like,
Right.
So if we do a broken Bronco, so you might do 1 rep, have a minute rest. Like you're doing those on like 45 seconds and they're fast. Like you're sprinting.
Yeah.
He's essentially doing like 45-second reps.
Bro, 411 is flying.
Yeah, bro. And then there was a kid, Ruru. He ran 412. Shit. So this is the thing, right? And like he always gets left out of the story.
Yeah.
Because he came second.
Yeah.
But it's like, bro, 412 is like a joke as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Seeing, I've never been
nearly
like
full pace the whole time, essentially.
100%.
Like outside of being in your anaerobic of like actually fully sprinting, that's as fast as you can go.
And Bodie's fucking fast though. Fuck. Like he could be a winger in any team and be the fastest winger.
How much does he weigh?
I honestly don't know. He's quite tall and
Lean.
Yeah, like lean.
Yeah.
Like he's built like a whippet type thing, like a old greyhound. Like he's just long, wiry.
Fucking hell.
He's pretty tall.
411.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Oh, he's super fast.
That's fucking hectic. And was that like him just coming back in a preseason?
First day of preseason at the Blues. And so this story just went like everywhere because we're running ours. And then you hear that and you're like, we're running this tomorrow, man. Yeah. Like, fuck, why do you have to release that?
But that's a crazy thing. Like all the greats, that's all they got in common usually.
For sure.
Usually, like them, you got your rogues, like you know, like I'm sure Joey tried really, like in fitness, like, but he's your rogue that just somehow, he's the one in a bazillion kind of thing.
As you said, he's the rogue, he's the minority, and
he's the exception, not the rule.
Yeah, for sure. And see, and that's the thing, right? Even if you're that talented, like if you just have certain level of discipline in that, man, your whole life becomes so much easier because. Let's say, how old did Joey play till?
That's the thing. Didn't play till, like, you compare him to, say, a Cam Smith that played till he was bloody 600 years old.
That's my point. Like, you imagine having that greatness around for that long.
Okay, so walk through winning the comp, like, because you came to the club bottom of the table, like, honestly, just not great. All the way to a premiership. So, like, you've done it's almost, I'm not sure, like, personally whether you wanted to do this, but, like, from a fan's perspective, the one thing they always say is, could he do it in a team that's not great? And there's guys that go out and win premierships with big dog teams, and it's fucking hectic. That's incredible. But the ones that are remembered are the ones that take a team that struggles to the top.
And I think that's what, like, sort of captivated the country and, like, just footy fans around the world. Was like, our team, if you go over that list and put it against the Crusaders, like, we're playing the All Blacks. And then you had, like, some dudes, like, we had Bo Robinson was our flanker, and he's basically was working at a pub, and you know what I mean. So like that's the like crux of our team, just like guys that people didn't know, young dudes, guys that had potential, things like this. And so winning that comp, and it was pretty cool to be a part of because you just saw the game, like we were averaging 45,000 people a game. And at this stage, we were averaging more than the Bronx. Because that was one of the KPIs that the front office would come through and tell us about.
And Bronx are number 1 in the NRL at the time. So, like, that's hectic.
So it was just like, and we sold that stadium out, like, completely. So 52,000, I think it was 3 or 4 times that year. So we had the Blues in a semi. Then we played the Crusaders twice. One being the final. And there was one other game. I can't remember which one it was. But... so it was just like the whole run of that year, bro. It was like, I learned so much when I look back at that through our coach at the time, Ewan McKenzie, just in strategy. So I had never looked at So we always had game plans, right?
Yeah.
And so let's say a game plan says, we want to have all our passes out front. We want to sort of try and do these set piece moves or so forth, like real basic stuff.
Whereas strategies like, there's a spot there, we want to work over number 10.
Yeah. So, well, you've got strategies like that, and then you've got like psychology strategies, like even further. So what we did, and I remember this little situation that we had. So we went over to Cape Town, and we were playing against the Stormers, and it was we were both first equal at the time, but Queensland had never been outright number one in history.
Wow.
So we get off the plane and we're driving Cape Town, bro. It's like the best place to travel to.
Yeah.
Like, I'm talking the best. Still my favorite place in the world, and one of the best places to play.
Wow.
Like the stadium and everything. But we get off the plane and onto the bus, and we're all the boys licking their lips on the way to the waterfront. That's where you usually stay, this mad hotel right in the thick of everything. We start driving past that. And so me and a few of the other boys at the back, yo, hey, where are we going? And like Ewan says nothing. So we're kind of yelling out more, hey, you missed the stop. It's like, fucking, well, where are we going? We drive to this hotel right next to the stadium. So like you imagine hotels like right next to the stadium. Like there's nothing. They're always in the city or around the spots. This hotel, man, I'm like, we get there and we're like, what's going on? He gets up and says, look, boys, we're staying here and I don't want anyone to go into the waterfront at all this week. That's just the one rule. The reason why, Queensland's never been outright number one. So I don't want you guys going anywhere near that. I just want you to focus on this game. We win this game, then you guys can do whatever you want. Just meet us back in Australia.
Yeah.
And don't get arrested. So that's basically what he said, was like, and so our boys all being a young group, we're sort of like, a fair trade.
Yeah.
You know, but little did he know there was a nightclub sort of joined right on like 100 meters from the stadium, which was one of the like best nightclubs.
No way.
So we spent our week going back and forth on this nightclub, but we fully locked in that week on the game. And then the strategy that I talk about is, so he brought in all these like newspaper clippings, videos, and put these videos up in our team meetings of the South African media basically bagging their team. So the Stormers, saying how boring they were, because the Stormers, they had won every game, but they scored the least amount of tries in the competition, and they were sitting first.
Wow.
So I think they at the time, so it was like 5 games in, and they had scored like 3 tries in 5 games. And we had scored like, we were the top try scoring team. So what he said was like, look, they're selling this game as us coming here to entertain for them. So they're using us to entertain. We're not going to entertain them. You know what we're going to do? They're incapable of scoring tries. So he's like, Quade, this is what I want you to do. I want you to kick the ball down the middle of the field every time you get it. And I was like, what? How's that going to work?
Yeah.
And he's like, they don't know how to attack. They can't score a try.
Yeah.
So we're just going to, when the crowd gets involved and they start booing their team, which they're already doing, then they're going to start trying to do things that they're not capable of.
Wow.
And then we're going to pounce on that. So I'm like, okay, like, mate, I trust them more than anything at this stage. And I'm like, okay, cool. We go into the game, get the ball. Boom, I'm just kicking it down the middle of the field. And they're going, some of them going into the in goal, and that's a 22. Yeah. At 22 it back to us, we catch it, smack it back down.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like, you think 20 minutes into the game, the crowd's just getting pissed off, like, because they think the Reds are coming into town. Reds are doing backflips after tries. They're doing dances. They're scoring 4 or 5 tries a game and doing this crazy shit.
Yeah.
Now they're just kicking the ball.
Yeah.
And so then they're booing. They actually start throwing like rubbish and stuff like down onto their booing. And then what happens is I kick this ball and it rolls just onto the in goal, and their fullback at the time picks it up and kind of doesn't dot it down and just goes, the crowd's into him, and he just runs it. He runs, steps 2 people, boom, boom, and he's like a freakish athlete. Steps 2 people, and then one of our guys hit him. He just knocks the ball on. We pick it up and score the easiest try of the game.
Oh, man.
And then, like, I remember at that point in time when that happened, and I look up at the scoreboard, like, they've kicked like 4 penalties, we've kicked 4 penalties, and then we end up scoring a try. And I'm like, we've done nothing, and we're winning this game. Then, again, same sort of thing happens. They try and run the ball off a line out deep in their 22, a knock on, we swoop on it, we end up scoring again.
No way.
Look up at the scoreboard, I'm like, man, this dude's a genius.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So then it was like, that was my like introduction to like proper game plans, like in terms of, hey, this is how we're gonna play this team, and
More
this
like
how
gamesmanship to a degree.
exactly. So then we flew home. We had the bit like honestly after that game,
Right.
like I'm talking, it goes down in history
Biblical.
as one of the best experiences. And then we fly home, and he gave us so we flew home Sunday, Monday, gave us Tuesday, Wednesday off, and we just came into training for one training session on the Thursday. And we were playing the Bulls from South Africa again at Suncorp. And so this week he's gone, we're not going to kick the ball out once.
Oh, wow.
Like if they kick the ball out and you can catch it, throw it in, I don't care. I don't want any lineouts. So this was, again, like I was just getting so, like I was loving these game plans so much, because now it wasn't about just footy. This was like psychology.
Yeah, for sure.
And so then it was so stimulating going up against these teams and going, okay, this is how we're going to strategically beat them with our rugby plays and stuff. And this is how we're going to strategically beat them with our minds.
Yeah.
And we're going to like use both these things and come out on top. And that was just like, I guess for me, a part of my career that like really flipped everything, where I was like, oh, I can like, this is
Even
how
more to this.
Yeah, there's way more. I know this much.
Yeah.
You know, so then, but as I said, then we get to the end of that, we win the comp and everything like that. And I thought, I know it all now.
Yeah.
Like I've got all the answers. That's it. Like it's done. Like it's all locked up.
Yeah.
Now I can't lose a game from now on.
Yeah. And as you know, it's always learning. Man, what was it like lifting that trophy though? Like, what a journey.
Yeah, well then, exactly, sort of, as we're just chatting about those sort of psychological advantages that we had going into games, I remember lifting up the trophy, and it was like, it just represented all that sort of stuff. So we had gone through like a heap of adversity as a team, but also, you know, Brisbane at that time, the floods and everything.
Yeah.
So it was just something that was kind of like bringing the whole community together. So when we lifted up that that trophy in that stadium, when there was people who were in there that didn't have seats, they were just standing up.
Wow.
Like, and then as we sort of spoke about, I've gone from my debut being this place is empty, and being kind of let down of what this experience is supposed to be, to now this is what it's supposed to be.
100%.
And we've achieved what we set out to do.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like the downfall, really, because now we've got to the destination. Yeah. And I actually didn't have the tools required to move forward from that point, because as I said, like I thought I had
22,
22.
So young as.
Yeah, and coming from, so we went, when I first played, last, second last. And then we went, last, second last. Then we went fifth, I think it was. We missed out on the semis. Then we won it the following year.
Wow.
Like 2010 was probably more fun than 2011, because it was just like out of nowhere.
We're just winning games. How good is this?
Coming last, like no expectation, and like not even our own fans. But then you'd look in the stands and 40,000. I was like, this is more like it. Then 2011, this is professional footy. Yeah, this is what like I dreamed of.
Mate, just as I said, to take it from like last to Premiership in spans of 24 months is wild.
It was, man, it was pretty crazy, bro. Like, and I just look back at our team, and some of those guys went from like never being able to make a team, to being some of the best players in the country, and if not in the world. And
so for the next few years, you obviously continue to play with the Reds, you can continue to play with the Wallabies. But at what point did you start, I guess, potentially looking elsewhere? Because you left the Reds, came back to the Reds, and then obviously it sounded like the reports were there were dramas, and then you left again. Yep. What was the thought process around that time?
So this is like you talking about when I left to go to Melbourne and that?
So you went to the Sevens for a bit?
Oh, yeah. So that I was playing in France at the time. So I left the Reds.
You go to Toulon?
Yeah,
Yeah.
to go to Toulon. So that was after the 2015 World Cup. So I wasn't really playing a huge part in that. And with Michael Checker's team, I wasn't heavily involved. And we were going through a few things at the Reds at the time, because Ewan McKenzie had left, and I sort of, for me, it was like a big moment when he left, you know, and I was quite like territorial of the Reds at the time, because I was like, I just wanted him and our coach Jim McCaw to stay there, and they had left, and everything sort of changed.
Yep.
And again, looking back, you know, with hindsight, and I was just a spoiled brat, you know what I mean? So I was just kicking stones and throwing my toys, because it wasn't how I wanted it to be, or how I had seen it to be successful. So at no point was I willing to change and evolve.
Yeah, okay.
You know, so you get a new coach, and I was still stuck in, I want it like this. This is how I want the game plans. Like, I wanted them done like that. I wanted everything to stay the same, because in my head, that was the book of answers. That's how it was. We won the comp. Like, don't change. Like, I want it to stay that way. And I was so stuck in that way that it was like, I kind of blew up everything around me because I didn't get my way.
Yeah.
So I was like, screw it, I'm out.
Yeah.
I'm going. And I went to Toulon. Like, it was a lot more money to go to Toulon anyway. And I was getting paid really well in Australia. But I was just like, nah, I'm out. And I left without telling anyone. Just jumped on a train after the World Cup final.
Wow.
And went to Toulon. Get off the plane there, and then started there. So what happened was, I ended up sort of trying to play sevens, because I wanted to go to the Olympics. And that was also a way of sort of getting back into Australia. Then the coach at the time, he got sacked, and a new coach took over who, like, I respected a lot. And that was how I got back to Queensland.
Okay. With the going to Toulon, so were you contracted to the Reds, and you just, or was it more just like?
I was off contract.
Okay.
And so I had a contract that I'd actually, so it was a weird situation. I basically signed both contracts.
Wow.
So it was like, I'd agreed to both contracts. But then, so I had my Toulon owner fly to the World Cup, and he walked into my hotel, like the Wallabies hotel, and I was like, oh my gosh.
Shit.
And I told him, like, no, I don't want to come.
Yeah.
And he was like, no, you have to. And I was like, and then we sort of had a conversation, and there's like a break fee of like 150,000 euros. So at the time, that was around 250 grand.
Yeah.
So I had to pay that to get out of it. I can't remember with the Reds one with what happened, because I just left.
So, like, what was it? Just was your headspace just completely, like, to sign 2 contracts? Was your headspace just off? Like,
well, I never wanted to leave the Reds ever.
Okay.
And again, that goes back to me being like, that was my home. I was comfortable.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was always like that. Like, to me, playing for one team was like the ultimate.
yeah.
And that's all I wanted to do. So to me, that was my home. And which is why, as I said, when things sort of broke up around that with the coaches and that, I was pretty upset and disappointed, because like in some ways that feels like, oh, your dad leaving.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
And it's like loyalty as well. Like, you're loyal
For sure.
to what that's been built.
exactly, bro. And so like I was super pissed about that. You know, so then when I went to Toulon, it just made everything like a bit grey again, because I signed 2 contracts because I just didn't know what I wanted. And you know, it's easy for me to sit back here now and look back and say, I just didn't know where I was as a person.
Yeah.
I was so lost, bro.
Yeah.
I was just like, footy, I was just playing it because I was good at it.
Yeah.
I wasn't really contributing, and that's why I said I didn't play much in the World Cup. And I was still, at the time, I still believe that I was the best number 10 at the time, but just my effort was 0. So like, yeah, I was more talented, but I was just offering nothing. So I was probably a detriment to the team. So I'm that decision now, I'm like, man,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have picked me.
Yeah. Okay.
So like that just shows where I was as a person, as an athlete, where my priorities were at, the things I cared about. And so then when I decided to just leave to Toulon, that was just me running away.
Yeah.
I was just escaping everything. But I didn't actually fix any of the issues that were going on. I actually was just acting like a child. So that's where my head was at. And having these 2 contracts, it was just like I just chose that one because I just didn't want to deal with any of this.
Yeah, okay.
And so by me choosing that, it was just a whole lot of money that was easy to get.
Yeah, okay. And so what, the Reds, were they kind of like, because of all the drama and
It was
everything?
more ARU.
Okay.
So like Australian Rugby and the Reds, like you sign contracts with both. So it was but the reason why I was leaving was not because of the ARU, it was more so the Reds.
The Reds and that. Okay. So you go to Toulon, and then was it a matter of like missing home and missing, or you just, what was the path back in? Or do you feel like you still hadn't addressed yourself?
Yeah. So I still, it was just like I didn't want to leave to start with.
Yeah, okay.
So when the opportunity came with the new coach taking over, like he obviously knew how good of a player I was. So he was like, we're going to get you, and what I sort of meant to Queensland. So because they were struggling, ticket sales, things like this.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, if we get our guy back, who's Queensland, he's been there since he's 15, we won a premiership, well and our team was actually good that he assembled.
Yep.
But again, like I hadn't sorted anything out. I was just expecting that it was going to go back to normal how it was, and everything here, we're just going to win another premiership.
Yeah.
You know, so I come back, everything's rosy for the first bit. Then I basically get injured a few times. Then I get suspended, like I do a high tackle, get suspended, so I miss majority of the thing, and then our season's like a bit of a shit show again.
Yeah.
And we were just partying. Like, myself, a few other boys, like our focus was on when we could party and how hard we could party and so forth. So that just was never going to be a good ending. And then that's when basically sort of stuff finished there is I had the fallout with the Reds. So, but I was on a 3-year contract. So I ended up just staying and playing local club footy. Yeah. But that was like, again, like that was the best time of my career, really. I had the best time.
Do you feel like those 3 years really you found who you were as a bloke? Like, yeah.
So we're talking about like a lot of the stuff that I'll talk about is like ego and that, right? So I look back at all of that stuff and it was, my ego was just out of control. And that's from a standpoint of the only things that drove me were things that were of short-term gratification. Yeah. Like as you talked about earlier, those dopamine hits of going like, fuck, this feels good. Yeah. So because it doesn't last long, I just needed that all the time. Yeah. So I was either like searching for validation through, I signed back at the Reds. That felt good for that little time because everyone's, he's back and home and it's nice. So it felt good. And then you get injured. So I'm not on the field. So then what am I chasing now? Like, you know what I mean? Like I just need to find that gratification and satisfaction somewhere. And it wasn't until that all happened at the Reds that I realized that I'm finding my worth and my enjoyment in this thing that I can't control. I can't control I don't have total control over it. And I'm finding my worth in the person that goes out there and plays the game. So if someone likes me, that's because I thought it was because I played the game. Yeah. So I spent that time really with, like, you strip it back. You only go to training Tuesday and Thursday nights for club footy. Yeah. 6:30 at 9. And if I don't want to train, like, as in they're doing contact, well, I'm not going to do contact. Yeah. And those sort of things. But it was like I just got involved in it. I just got down at training and trained with them, and then I would start organising training outside of it for the boys. And I actually just started really loving seeing other people grow. So I was getting satisfaction and gratification. Like, it felt good seeing others do well. And it was like, so I would coach the boys and that at training, and we come up with this style of play. So then, as we sort of spoke about, I knew that stimulated me, thinking about the game, thinking about how other people could get better. And when you actually see guys go from having, because club footy, they don't get any help. So what they have available to them is very little. Like there might be one ball that we
It's
have.
old as shit.
Yeah, so I like got heaps of balls from Gilbert, brought them down. Things like that. That now, okay, this is the level as what I know about these type of drills. Let's do some of these.
Yeah.
And that year was just like so enjoyable from the fact that our team, again, that team that I came and joined came like last the year before. And then we should have played in the finals. But we made the semi and we lost the semi to the team that went on to win it. But it was just like, who would have thought?
Yeah,
Like, people that came and watched those games, the brand of footy that we played. So what I got out of that was like I learned about myself and went on a separate journey.
Yep.
I learned about footy because there was no real help.
Yeah.
But there was this blank canvas that was like, oh, like, here you go, here's an opportunity.
And like players that are there for the love purely.
Right, we came up with this like style of play because it was like, I remember playing in a Barbars game and Alan Jones was a coach. And he said to me, he's like, bro, telling the boys, keep the ball up off the ground. Like, just want you to do mauls and stuff like this. And I didn't, and I was the captain. And I didn't understand what he was saying. Then one day it kind of like flicked. He was like, and I was like, he just doesn't want rucks.
Yeah.
And I was like, why doesn't he want rucks? And I started thinking about it. I'm like, rugby union is so like, it's not played right because rucks, if we went back in time and sort of look back where rugby union started, no, rucks weren't even involved. Like rucks something that we brought in because we're trying to steal the ball off each other, right? So then if we try and eliminate rucks, what does that do? It means that there's less chance for the opposition to steal the ball, but the game's a lot faster. Because if there's no rucks, well then, because the average speed of a ruck's like 3 seconds.
Yeah.
So if you can get no rucks, well, how does the defense know where to line up?
Yeah.
So and then we started trying to go, okay, let's go into this game. On average, let's say for example there was 100 rucks per game. We're like, let's get this down as low as we can. And then you think about how the actual game looks with no rucks. Well, how do you not do a ruck? Well, you offload, you pop the ball off the ground, you break a tackle instead of, because one of the rules in league, union, coaches will say, fight to get to ground.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to tackle me, why am I trying to do your job for you?
Yeah.
So like we just kind of flipped the game, and then our games were so exciting to watch, entertaining.
Yeah.
We're like averaging like 50 points a game.
Wow.
And so like then teams would actually start playing our style because we'd get like a 30-point lead.
Yeah.
And now they have to throw their shit out the window and just start throwing the ball around. So then the game would be like 50 to 60.
How good.
And it was so much fun, bro. But that's like what I got out of that time in my career was a lot to do with football, but more so to do with me as a man.
Yeah, it's interesting like how you can sometimes just like strip it all back and take it back to what really got you to the dance, which was just a love for rugby.
Bro, exactly, man. And that's the hard thing though, is like it shouldn't take people to get to rock bottom to want to figure things out. You know what I mean? Because there's only so many rock bottoms because that climb gets harder and harder.
Oh, 100%.
So, and that's why for me the hard thing is like, hey, it's easy to climb up from the bottom because you got no choice.
Yeah.
But when things are going well, and I alluded to that before, is stay disciplined and build habits and structures in place to allow you to continue to thrive.
Yeah. And like even if you don't have the same fire as when you were starting or whatever, you have to identify the fact that don't change the turning up. Don't just keep turning up.
And that's the thing, right? So you're talking about fire, and I don't know if my fire is the same. But my habits and my discipline now is completely different.
Yeah, 100%.
So on the days where I don't want to go to training, well, it's easy to go to training because that's what I do.
Yeah, and you almost say, these are the days I have to go to training. Like
100%.
That's what I said. Whenever I'm like, oh, I'm just going to do this, or I'm like, as soon as you start thinking that, it's like a trigger to go, oh, you must be there.
Yeah,
you must be there.
Those are points throughout our life and throughout our day. So we have these big moments in our lives throughout our lives and career. But then you have these moments throughout the day where it's like, so last year when we were in Wallaby camp, so they gave us like a week off. And so with the week off, but we were in camp still in Perth. Like for me, I'm still like, okay, we've got a week off, but I still need to structure my week. So I have a plan. Yeah. So I know what I'm going to do, and then I can't, I need to fall on that. I need to do these things. So I'm like, I'll train gym Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and I'll run Tuesday, Thursday. So on the Tuesday, I'm going, and I've got a couple of the young boys train with me, and me and Duncan go down to the field to run it, and it's pissing down with rain. We pull up, and it just starts pissing down like right on us, and that's one of those moments where you're like, well, it's a week off, and it's raining. Like, we could come back and do this later. Let's just come back and do it later, or let's just not do it at all.
Yeah.
Or let's just go and do it.
Let's get it done.
Get it done. And it's like,
you never feel bad after a fitness session.
Ever. But it's like, but those are those decisions. And the reason why that decision's easier for me to make now is because it's who I am. So that's who I am. Those are my personality traits, is that I go and run on the Tuesday and Thursday. I said I was going to do it. Yeah. I'm going to do it. Yeah. In a week off. So if it's not a week off, I'm going to be on this schedule. Yeah. But this is my schedule, and I stick to that. Yeah. So at that moment, I remember we walked out, it was pouring with rain, and like, so you still feel shitty, like, oh, man. And then we start running, and then the moment we started running, it stopped raining. And then I started cracking up because I was like, oh, there you go.
You could have been on the car on the way home, and then everyone looked at each other feeling guilty, like, bruh,
that's it. We should have. So it's like, yeah. So we got through it, and then, but that, like, to me was like a moment that for myself was just like a small moment where we have those throughout the day. Yeah. And those are the things that the better you get at those, and you make them a habit to choose the right thing, or the thing that you sometimes don't want to do, it just gets a little bit easier when you have those conversations with yourself. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I went, the first Broncos camp I ever went to, and I'll still remember it, Ivan Henjak said to me, and this is, I wasn't playing, I was still a soccer player at this stage, and he said, bad habits are like a good bed, easy to get into, hard to get out of. Yeah. Talk about your boxing career. Obviously, you made your debut on the SBW card 2013. Do you enjoy it? Like, I love it. Love it. Is it nerve-wracking? That's the first one. The first one, man. So like, and one of the cool things about boxing is that, you know, coming from a team sport. We go into the changing rooms, and it's like you've got a guy sitting next to you, guy sitting next to you here, guy across from you. So everything you do kind of impacts them. Yeah. And so players still try and be a bit selfish, like, oh, okay, so I'm listening to my music or things like this. In boxing, you don't, like, it's only you. So if you want no one in your change room, if you want loud music, if you want whatever, it's your change room. Yeah. So that was the cool thing, is like I was in my change room and I was just getting ready, lying down, had a physio giving me a massage and stuff like this, and just going about my preparation. Had all my mates in there, music playing. It was a bit of a vibe, hey. And then we get told, hey, we're going on next, so like get ready. It could be about 30 minutes, or 20 minutes. Shit. So my trainer says, get up, let's go. Chucks me the skipping rope, and he's like, all right, just do 3 rounds. And I went to skip, and I just couldn't skip, bro. I was like, I couldn't even do one jump. I went to jump, and it just kept hitting my leg. Yeah. And I was like, what the hell? And then the room, like, they're like, everyone's looking. I go to do it again. And then dead silent. The room just like, I'm telling you, like, everyone was just like, oh my God. And I was like, fuck. And my trainer comes over. He just threw me the gloves, put the gloves on, and then we just started hitting the pads. Yeah. As soon as I started hitting the pads, felt good. Just getting that flow. Yeah, bro. So it was just like, oh, okay. I was just, I don't know, I was nervous. Yeah. So then we're standing at the like entrance to walk in. And so like thoughts are going through my head at this stage, like, man, if you get knocked out, like everyone's going to be last, going to be on like the front page, you knocked out. Yeah, like, everyone's going to laugh at you, things like this. Constantly being, so I was just like, I was getting really quite nervous. And so that was kind of like what was motivating me. Like, the guy that I was fighting, I had nothing against him, but for me it was easy because this is sport. But I get into the ring, and I actually had never been in a proper boxing ring. Really? I'd only boxed in the ring at my training facility. Okay, and then was it smaller ring or a bigger ring? It was a little bit smaller. Yeah, okay. But the ground it was different. It wasn't as bouncy, but it also, the ring that I got into, it's kind of like this carpet material. So it's quite grippy. Yeah. And I got in there, and like I was like, and I like went to scuff my foot, and I like nearly tripped over, thinking, oh, this is different. I freaked out a bit, and it was like really spongy. And then I go through this awkward moment where I'm like standing in the ring, and when we run out as rugby players onto the field, like you've done it that many times, you know what to do. You run on the field, like you might go for a run to the post and back. Like I'm taking the kickoff, so I just go grab the ball,
jump your knees up to your chest.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
Stuff,
like all the stuff that footy players do.
Yeah.
I'm not a boxer. I don't know what boxers do. Yeah. So I walk into the ring and I'm looking around and I'm like, and there's a fair bit of time because the announcer's like doing some stuff to the crowd and I'm standing there and then I'm like, oh, what's he doing? I look over at him and he's sort of doing a bit of shadow boxing. And bro, shit, you know, if you watch this video, you'll see me sort of go, get up and kind of like, it just looks real awkward. Like it's not even a real shadow boxing thing. I do like a little hop. And then I feel weird and I stop. I go, oh. And then I'm just like, walk over to my corner and I'm like, take my shirt off. It's just the most awkward thing. But so we go up and touch gloves and then the ref sort of says things. And it just took me back to like, I don't know if you've ever been in a fight at school, but it's possibly one of the scariest feelings because let's say you're at school and you know you're going to have a fight with someone and it's daunting, bro, because it's like, shit, like this is all going to happen. Like you can feel the tension. So when you're in a boxing ring, it's like you feel the tension between you. You look over and you see your corner, their corner. Like there's so much on the line. Then the crowd, like the crowd they're not saying like tackle him hard. Yeah, it's like F him up, kill him.
They want blood.
Yeah. So like that feeling in there was like quite nerve wracking. But then the moment the bell rang, I walked up and I just throw a jab, and I was like, oh, this is cool. Like, it feels good, whatever. Moving around. And then he goes to jab me and I go to move and try and do a shoulder roll. But again, that carpet, I stick into the carpet and I like trip and he hits me at the same time over my like shoulder. And in that moment, I like all the crowd going crazy, thinking I'm going to get knocked out. And then he thinks that he's hit me too. And I'm like, nah. So then now it just kind of just turns into I'm supposed to just jab this whole round. I just get pissed because he did that to me. So I walk over and then we just start banging him. But it was just like, honestly, it's the best experience. And one of my friends last year, I just teed him up a fight at our local gym because we were doing all this training. And I said, bro, because he's quite like a timid guy. I was like, bro, just have a fight like in the gym, like controlled environment where it's like, because honestly, you'll learn so much about yourself in this moment because it's like these fears that you have, even though they're not fears of like fighting, when you get in there, that fear of getting hit is a real thing. And so like someone will throw a punch and you'll move like that far away from the punch. You know, whereas like
all the rookies like step way back out of range and they're like running around the ring and that.
So and that was the thing. So that was one of the best things, seeing him go through that fight. And I remember him as like a person after the fight being like totally different. And the reason why I wanted him to do that was just to do something, commit to something and stick it out. Like even against all your fears and that. So it's, bro, honestly, like I love it. And there was times, so before I went to Japan, like I just wanted to quit rugby and box. But Coda wouldn't let me, there's a few times like, and I remember the year before that, like I was going through like a tough period. It wasn't really a tough period, but I was just like, bro, I'm going to quit. I just want to box. And he'd be like, no, you're effing not. Don't you dare. And I'd be like, bro, I'm honestly going to quit, man. I just want to go. I just want to box.
Got that taste and the love for it and the learning.
I think the learning was the main thing. So what I didn't know at the time, and like as we're sort of saying now, is like with hindsight looking back, what I was after was like something that I was stimulated doing, that I was learning from. And the reason why I wasn't finding that in rugby, like I did for when I went back and played the club footy stuff, but that again, like I was loving rugby in that, but it was like I felt like the growth that I had in these things, like in boxing, that was so much more. So it was a lot more stimulating. So then the key for me was like finding that in life and not using sport like rugby or boxing to get that same feeling from. So that was like a massive turning point for me. So when I went to Japan, the focus wasn't on, hey, just do this in rugby and find that feeling from rugby, find that in your life, and rugby's this big in your life.
Yeah.
It'll transfer over, and that was a huge point for me in my life and in my career.
Yeah, boxing is such an interesting one. Like the way I try to explain it to people is like when you see two people speak a different language, like Spanish or something, looks really easy.
Yeah.
Looks really easy. But it's like learning a whole new language, boxing. Everything is, your feet need all that kind of stuff. And so that's what's so intriguing about it. You're learning a whole, like the way to stand, the way to take your cardio, everything is different.
Yeah.
And that's what's so addictive about it, I think.
Bro, it's crazy, man, because like you said, man, every time I left the gym, it was like I learned so much.
Yeah.
Because like footwork, so then you got your footwork, but then your feet got to work with your hands.
Then your head's got to be moving too.
Exactly. Then your head's got to be moving with your hands. But then there's a guy across from you. And the most fun thing about boxing for me is like figuring out your strategy or like your habits. Yeah. And so I like being across from someone, and it's like a chess game.
100%.
You're standing there, they're moving, then you go, okay, every time he moves like this, he does this.
He
and
throws
then
his
it's like,
jab out lazily, or I can get that jab out of him if I want to.
When he does this, I'm going to see, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Now, then he reacts like this.
Yeah.
So then it's just like a puzzle that you just continually try and work out. And sometimes you don't work it out and you get hit. And you're like, but now, now I figured him out when he sees me do this.
Yeah.
And so you spend 3 minutes in one round doing all of that.
And it's like layer on layer on layer on layer.
And it just gets deeper and deeper. And like, I guess even when I've sparred people that have been way better than me, like obviously being professional athletes, like we're probably more athletic than most of the boxers in that, because we've spent from we're like 14, 15 doing weights. They speak the language. Exactly, bro. And I've been towed up from guys, and I'm like, so I guess that goes back to even when I've had my fights, I look a certain way and people will think, this is unfair. You're fighting this guy. Yeah. But it's like, this dude's had 20 fights and like is a fighter, and I'm a like rugby, but I look the part. Yeah. So that was always the hard part. It was like,
people that say that have never been into a boxing gym.
Yeah,
if you've been into a boxing gym, you would know it doesn't matter what you look like.
100%.
You can have some dude that's got a gut that could go 12 rounds.
And that was the thing. So the first time I stepped in the boxing gym and had my first training session, I got towed up from one of the guys in our gym who at the time he was probably like 55 and like grey hair, like old man looking. Yeah. And I said to my trainer, nah, I'm not sparring him. And he was like, you spar him. He holds himself all right. Like I get in there, like boxing, and this dude slips my punch, bang, hits me straight in the stomach. Like, bro, I'm like, I want to take a knee. Feels like his fist is lodged in my stomach, and I'm just trying to run away, but like crouching. He's just swinging at me. Yeah. And like, so if that round had gone any longer, he probably would have knocked me out. Yeah. You know what I mean? But it was like that sort of instilled the fear as well. So every time I trained, I didn't care who I was training against. I would just be thinking I'm fighting Mike Tyson.
100%.
That was my mindset, because it was just like, I saw what happened to me with this guy, and I was thinking, I'm gonna smash him. Yeah. But these boxers, bro, it's a different breed.
Different breed, bro. And as like they speak the language. They're moving so fluently, conserving so much energy in certain situations. Like, you know better than me, bro. But, bro, I ask your clothing brand. How did that start?
Bro, that was just more so something that, like, obviously I love fashion and that. Ice, one of my good mates, he started his YKTR label and that. And it was something I always wanted to do. So when I saw him doing it, I was like, kind of like inspired by that. Like, I seen it, but I just didn't have the time or the business mind to go out and try and do that. I was kind of like a bit scared, And also when I look back on it, I wasn't sure of who I was as a person to go out and do that, because like when you create clothing in that, well, you're creating a way for people to judge you, right? So like if someone goes, I hate that t-shirt, or that's ugly, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's a piece of me. I love it. Yeah. So it was like a real daunting thing to do. But like now, like I'm so sure of who I am and happy with who I am, that like doing something like that was just an extension of my creativity, but also an extension of me being able to progress in life to say, hey, I love doing this. This is what I want to do, and I'm going to strive to do it to the best of my ability. So that's been something that I've really loved. And so
I love the branding in that, bro. I love the look of it. I really do.
It's been fun, man. So I have to send you some stuff, bro.
I messaged. Do you take care of the Instagram?
Nah.
No, I messaged him ages ago because I wanted to buy some shirts, but I wanted like dark black colours.
Oh, yeah, we haven't done any dark colours yet.
But I'm getting fitter now, bro, so I'll be able to wear light colours. So back then I was so unfit, I didn't want any light colours.
For sure.
But if you bring it, I mean, now that I'm getting a little bit fitter, I'll be able to wear some light colours. So
I'll get some stuff sent to you, bro.
I appreciate it, bro.
But it's been so much fun, man. It's been a learning curve because even though, like, as an athlete, like, you're a business in itself, like, learning about proper business, like, man, it's like mind blowing.
I still have no idea.
So, yeah, and like I'm at a small scale. Like even looking around here, like what would have to go on to get all of this done is like, man, and I'm just a startup, you know.
Yeah.
So it's been fun to learn about that, but also for my own growth, because as we said, like it's quite a daunting thing to do, and know that, hey, I'm starting as the rookie.
Absolutely.
And so from an ego point of view, I'm not expecting it to be the most loved brand or anything like that. And it's going to evolve as I get better at it. But it's also been something that, like, even when we make a certain item of clothing, you realize how much goes into it, bro. It's like a t-shirt, right? You think, oh, okay, I can just get this t-shirt and I'll make it a bit like this, make it a bit like that. I want it sort of to fit like this. Man, it's hard.
Yeah.
Like my first run of t-shirts, like I hated the way they fit.
Oh, really?
Because all the things that I wanted it to fit like just actually wasn't right.
Yeah,
like
okay.
when I got them, I was like, I still love them, but I was like, man, these are all the things that I wanted.
Yeah.
It's not really how I envisioned it, if that makes sense. Because I was like, there was things that more intricate parts that go to it than just going, okay, make the shoulders like this. Like one of my hoodies when I first made it, I wanted the shoulders nice and drop, but I didn't realize, so you drop the shoulders, well, that's adding material somewhere. Well, it's got to go from somewhere else.
Yeah.
So you couldn't even lift your arms up. Like you were stuck like this, so one of the samples. And I remember looking at it like, where have I gone wrong? And I remember the girl who was manufacturing it was like, oh, these measurements, I don't know if they'll work. And I was like, just do it.
Yeah.
Like, this is how I want it.
Yeah.
And then, when I got it, I was like, you were right.
Yeah, you're right.
Yes.
Your experience, you've been doing this for a while.
Sorry about that. Like me doing this for 3 weeks is it's gone to my head.
I think it's like a really, especially like, you're from, a blue collar, rough kind of, and I grew up blue collar as well, not much money. I think like, especially for like young kids that are from similar backgrounds to ourselves, we don't think that we can be businessmen.
Yeah, for sure.
We just think we're an athlete or we're a tradie or something like those lines. But until you get into it, you realize, hang on a sec, like no one really knows what they're doing. Like everyone is an imposter to a degree.
Yeah, everyone's working it out as they go.
100%.
But it's the same with sport though.
Yeah.
Like as we sort of alluded to, I thought I had all the answers. Yeah. But I wasn't even close.
Yeah, and you're playing for the Wallabies.
Yeah,
you know
what I mean? So like now, it's like now I know I don't have all the answers.
Yeah.
So I love learning about it. So then when you strip it back to business, the other thing with business though is like, because we're not from money, it's actually very daunting to spend money.
Yeah.
So this is a thing, right? So let's say you start this business and it says, oh, it's going to cost 20 grand to start. It's like 20 grand. Like, bro, like, man, no, I don't know. No, I'll just give it a miss.
Yeah.
Like
Whereas a business brain would be like, well, that 20 grand is going to turn into 40 grand.
Exactly.
They immediately think, well, it's actually not
possibility.
Even spending. It's not even spending money. It's making money to a degree if you're going to be able to make money. I was the same, bro. When I like one of my other directors of Bloke, we were just talking about doing this and doing this. This was like 2 years ago or something. And I kept saying, bro, that's so much money. Like, I don't think we should do that. And he's like, no, you don't understand. There's spending money and then there's investing money.
Yeah, for sure.
And there's just two different, and he's an accountant, so like, fucking knows.
But knowing that money is, there's a high chance, and like, so you could still lose that money, but there's a very high chance it's gonna work for us. Now, if you go out and like, and this is the thing with buying cars, things like this, like, and I was right into that because like I used to have, mate, like 5 or 6 watches that were all over between 20 and 30 grand.
Yeah, wow.
At least. So some of them probably more. But it was just like, because I felt like that was my worth. Like I was like, yeah, this is cool. Like I can spend money. But now if you take that 100 grand and go, okay, like I'm going to invest that into this. I'm going I'm going to spend it, but it's with the hope of it coming back in this way. Here's the outcome that I'm looking for. So as you said, like there's spending money and then there's like investing money, you know.
100%. So. And mate, I still, again, I've been doing this for a few years now. I've still got no clue. Like,
yeah, well, see, like coming from a similar background, who was it that you looked to for advice on money and that? Because,
bro, no one.
Yeah, see, because I had no advice. I remember when I got my first paycheck, and I thought my club was stealing money from me, but it was the tax. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so I rang my manager at the time, and I was like, bro, like they're ripping me off. Like, say I worked it out, like let's say I was getting 120 a year.
Yeah.
So we get paid monthly. So I was
Divided by 12.
Yeah. Divide that by 12, there's 10 grand. So I'm like, okay, why is it saying 5 grand? And, you know, and then I'm like, so then when he rings me, when I ring him and tell him, and he's like, I'm going to come around and stay there. I'm going to come around and we'll talk this through.
Yeah.
Comes through and he's like, okay, mate, so there's this thing called tax. There's this other thing, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, but why are they taking it? Like, I didn't understand. I never had money.
And it's insane. Like, why schools don't teach us
100%, bro,
is outrageous.
About money, about life.
Yeah.
So you think about learning how to do your times tables and that, right? Like, I wouldn't know how to do them now. Like, I don't use them like often. Like, it's like your basics.
Yeah.
But the things that I actually need to know is like, okay, if I go and buy a house, interest rates. Yeah. Like right now, look at how many people are going to get screwed over through interest rates.
What's interest? What's principals?
Exactly.
Like, I didn't know none of that. Like, yeah.
I have conversations with my sisters and that, and my family and some of my friends who are like, oh, I want to look at buying a house. And I'm like, okay, cool. And they're like, we start talking about it. And they're like, how do you know all this stuff? And I'm like, well, I bought houses and that, but like I didn't know nothing about it.
Yeah.
When I bought my first house, I remember Coda saying to me, okay, bro, like how many properties do you own? And I was like, oh, only one. And he's like, oh, okay, that's a good start.
Yeah. Because
this is when I went to him as my manager.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, that's a good start. And then little did I know that I didn't own that house. It's the bank's house.
Banks owned the house. Yeah.
I had only paid the deposit, and I was only paying interest only.
Yeah.
So then when I actually told him this, he's like, bro, you see, okay, so now we're in a worse position than I actually thought. So we're in debt, like, so he's like, okay, this is what we're going to do. You're going to pay it all off, then you own that house. So now you own the house. Then we'll save more money and we'll upgrade to the next house. But like without him in my life, like, and this isn't a fault to my parents, and they've just never been in that position.
Well, they're probably from an even tougher time than you were.
100%, bro. Like my mum and that, like money, and like, they never knew what to do with it. So me getting a contract at 16, 17, having more money than they'd ever seen in their life. Yeah. You know, so it's like, how am I going to get help from my parents, who are the ones who want to help you and who are supposed to help you? Yeah. So yeah, like that's why like the first probably 4 years of my career, bro, I didn't save a cent. Yeah. I didn't have 1 cent to I was spend monthly, my whole monthly wage. Yeah. Bang, like just that. Because
it was there.
It was there. And I was like, and I knew it would fill up. Yeah. Because, and it didn't bother me because I was just like, I had no awareness of money. Yeah. I didn't care about money because it was like, I never had it. So it was
just numbers in an account, really.
Yeah. But then as I got older, and it was like, sort of as we alluded to before, it was like, spending money was like, oh, okay, I got to be a bit more careful with it because the money doesn't just grow on trees. Yeah, yeah. So investing, they were like, I got burnt from an investment as an 18-year-old. Yeah, wow. From a guy who was associated with the Reds. Yeah, wow. He was one of their like, so I was introduced to him through the Reds, and I invested with him, and it's not much now, but like as an 18-year-old, yeah. 30 grand cash, and never saw it again. Like, and I was like, oh, okay. So like,
that's your first lesson from it as well.
Exactly, bro. Yeah. But yeah, like, even without going through that though, like, how was I supposed to learn? You know, so it was good that I met Coda, and then that's even sort of transferred across to like learning about the business with Shosai and that. Yeah. It's been some valuable lessons. And so that
SHOSAI on Instagram. Yeah. Give it a follow, listeners. I ask all the boys this. Favorite rapper of all time?
Oh, favorite rapper, bro. Man, like when I grew up, it was Tupac for sure.
Yeah.
Like that's where I grew up. That's pretty much all you listen to.
Yeah.
It was like hard rap and that.
Yeah.
Now, like, man, I'm pretty chilled now. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, Drake's, Kendrick,
Yeah.
all the same old. But so, like, I have to stay loyal and be from where I'm. Majority of the time that I listen to music would have been Pac.
Okay. Favorite movie of all time?
Oh man, Bad Boys was my favorite movie for years.
So good,
like,
bro.
just
Especially
man.
the first one.
Yeah, and everybody wanted to be like Mike.
Oh, bro.
Mike
100%.
Lowry. So
When they that iconic scene with the date with the daughter.
yeah.
Bro, stop it.
Bro, that's one of the best scenes, eh? Yeah, so like I used to quote that whole movie, bro, like when I was younger.
Yeah.
So I'll probably still say like Bad Boys.
Yeah. Yeah, good movie.
Iconic.
Brother, thank you so much for coming on.
No. It's good to be here, bro, and I appreciate you having me.
Appreciate it. That's it. Done. Boom.